Chapter 481 South Sky Peak was in an uproar. The instructors and deacons of the God of War Academy could hardly believe their eyes. They had expected a handful of promising talents to emerge from this academy assessment. Never did they imagine such a breathtaking result. In barely 10 days inside the secret realm, Ye Cheng had already met and surpassed the assessment's requirements. An achievement like this was nearly unheard of. Across all 13 realms of Beihuang Shenzhou, how many geniuses could match his pace and power? How did he pull this off? One deacon whispered, voice thick with incredulity. Around him, equally stunned colleagues exchanged bewildered glances, but the Academy's senior mentors wasted no time on doubt. Forget the speculation. Open the transmission channel at once. We'll go in person, a seasoned instructor announced, his tone resolute. We must escort Ye Cheng back safely and secure his official registration with the God of War Academy. His words carried like thunder through the hall. The other deacons snapped to attention, their confusion replaced by fierce determination. The Ares Academy instructors tasked with recruiting new students were also responsible for ensuring their safe passage to the school. Under ordinary circumstances, they would never split their escort detail until well over 100 freshmen had gathered. Yet here, at Nanling Pass, they refused to wait for the final enrollment lists, and now they wanted to whisk Xiao Yiren away immediately? It was an outrageous demand. Well, instructors, murmured one deacon anxiously, stepping forward. What about the rest of the freshmen you're supposed to protect? The deacon's voice trembled with concern. The Ares Academy's reputation was second to none. No sect in the northern wilderness would dare threaten its students. Still, caution was prudent. Even if a local power wouldn't risk open confrontation, what if these handful of deacons, each a Saint King-level cultivator, ran into unscrupulous bandits, rival sects in disarray, or other unpredictable dangers beyond these mountains? Could they guarantee the safety of every boy and girl under their charge? And that was only within the northern wilderness, what lay in wait beyond its borders. No matter how famed the academy might be, the path to its gates could be fraught with peril. If they abandoned the rest of the newcomers now, the consequences could be dire. The deacon's question, voiced on behalf of every worried soul present, hung heavily in the crisp mountain air. Ever since word got out that fresh recruits had arrived at Ares Academy, all promising prodigies of the northern wasteland divine continent, the old enemies of our lands have circled like vultures. The chaotic hordes from the Chaos Sea, the foul demons from beyond the stars, even the rival races of the continent itself. None of them will pass up the chance to strike at these Tianjiao, these natural-born talents, at their most vulnerable. And strike they have. Even those students who have somehow reached the Saint King realm and fled with their lives will find it nearly impossible to secure a place here at Ares, or anywhere else on the northern wasteland divine continent, from now on. Don't worry, one of the Saint King deacons said, stepping forward. Behind him, the other deacons began to murmur in agreement. Surely the academy's instructors would relent, leave a guard or two behind, and see these newcomers safely escorted through the outer gate? But the instructors only waved them off. No one knew the stakes better than they did. The northern wasteland divine continent was on the brink of disaster, and Ares Academy stood at its very heart. What they needed now was not a handful of gifted youths, but a single supremely powerful warrior, someone capable of turning the tide of war before it was too late. The Saint King deacons exchanged wary glances. To Ares Academy, Ye Cheng's potential was worth more than the combined promise of all the geniuses still undergoing the secret realm assessment. Yet they would not be so reckless as to abandon everyone else. We'll depart first, one of the senior mentors declared, and personally escort our young friend Ye Cheng to Ares Academy so he can complete his registration. Another mentor added, let the other students who passed the assessment wait here for the moment. We'll send them off with the final escort. Leaning forward, a third mentor explained, this time, our academy has not only discovered many outstanding talents in the northern wilderness, but also recruited several new mentors, some from distant lands, even from deep within the wilderness itself. Each of them has affairs to settle before formally reporting to Ares. I'll send them word at once. Those who are free can come here, guide one of the student groups, and accompany them to the academy. At that assurance, the Saint King deacons visibly relaxed. Finally, they could breathe easy, confident that every student, especially Ye Cheng, would receive the guidance and protection they needed on the journey ahead. The instructors didn't hesitate. At full speed, they made for Secret Realm number 12 to escort Ye Cheng back to Ares Academy for formal enrollment. Their excitement wasn't motivated solely by Ye Cheng's breathtaking talent, though that alone was more than enough to command their attention. It was also because of where he'd been discovered, Nanling. In the Moon Realm, there are 3 territories, Nanling, Kangshan, and Yue, and Ares Academy has assigned several instructors to each one. Their mission is to scout out prodigies, recruit them as new students, and abide by a strict system of rewards and penalties. The more exceptional the talent an instructor brings back, the greater the reward he earns. Out of the 15 instructors dispatched to the Moon Realm this time, the most successful by far has been Qi Wenxuan, Saint Lord of Formation Dao from the Heavenly Works Hall, one veteran observer remarked. I hear he not only uncovered 2 promising prospects in the wilderness, another added, but also pinpointed an extraordinary genius right here in Nanling. The moment word spread that Ye Cheng had been granted the Silver God of War order, an automatic exemption from the Academy's grueling entrance exam, every instructor involved in recruiting talent from Nanling was stunned into speechlessness. They all understood what the Silver God of War order represented, not only supreme honor, but also immense responsibility. If a prodigy who bore that order failed to perform once enrolled, or was later judged unworthy of the title, the recommending instructor would face severe censure, possibly even dismissal. Yet despite the risks, Qi Wenxuan had unwaveringly bestowed the order upon Ye Cheng. That alone spoke volumes. This young man's abilities must be nothing short of phenomenal. In fact, his recommendation ranked Qi Wenxuan first among the 15 instructors serving the Moon Realm. Now, as the delegation prepared to escort Ye Cheng, known throughout the region as Xiao Yiren, to the God of War Academy, excitement crackled in the air. They pictured the scene: triumphant return, thunderous applause, and the generous rewards that would surely follow. With hearts racing and expectations soaring, the group set out for the prestigious God of War Academy, eager to witness firsthand the greatness that had earned Ye Cheng his Silver God of War order. 2 months had slipped by in the War God Secret Realm's ongoing assessment, and now, on the very last day, deep within the 9th Secret Realm, a bolt of purple lightning tore through the sky. In the next instant, a robed figure burst out of the realm's exit and shot toward the nearest city. He was the Purple Thunder Saint, one of the Moon Realm's most celebrated prodigies. Cracks of violet lightning danced along his amethyst cloak, lending him the aura of a divine punisher. As he flew, he allowed himself a small, confident smile. 2 months to clear the War God Secret Realm. No one's ever done it faster than me. Below him, the massive gateway was C, led by the War God Academy's forbidden runes. No outsider, neither teacher nor elder, could approach. All across the nearby city, the families and mentors of the realm's candidates waited with bated breath, unable to intervene as their protégés fought for glory within. These precautions exist to guard against even the remotest chance that a powerful Taoist or an independent cultivator, nursing a grudge, might seek revenge on one of the Academy's newly minted geniuses. After all, anyone who survives the War God Academy's assessment emerges as one of the Northern Wilderness Divine Continent's foremost prodigies. Given their status, it's only right to provide the strictest protection. No sect or lone cultivator in the Moon Realm dares question the Academy's measures. They can only swallow their impatience and wait for the candidate's safe return. It was in that anxious lull that the Purple Thunder Saint Sun reappeared, stepping back into view like a living legend. The assembled cultivators fell silent, then looked on him with unbridled envy. Chapter 482. A ripple of admiration swept through the assembly hall. He truly lives up to his title as the Purple Thunder Saint. He passed the Secret Realm assessment in just 2 months. No one in our generation comes close. Be careful, he's outstanding, but it's still too early to crown him the absolute best in the Moon Realm. Murmurs of envy and caution swirled around him. Standing at the head of the hall, Ye Cheng, the Purple Thunder Saint, allowed a faint, proud smile. Yet at the same time his eyes darkened. Those whispers weren't born of respect, but of jealousy and narrow vision. Who in the entire moon realm rivaled his power? Who had a record to match his? Come here. He turned abruptly to one of his waiting disciples. Any word from beyond the city walls? The young disciple bowed and replied, voice steady in the tense hush. Master, the outlook is unchanged. No challengers have emerged, only rumors drifting through the outer provinces. Ye Cheng nodded curtly. He believed these rumors were the bleatings of the uninformed, but as he scanned his loyal followers' faces, an uneasy thought arrested him. One name rose unbidden to his mind, the mountain-moving demon ape. A towering legend of bloodlust and brutality, its demonic bloodline rumored to rival the very storms that fueled his own thunderous power. If those whispers held any truth, then this brute had the strength to challenge the Purple Thunder Saint himself, and perhaps even shatter his hard-won acclaim. Silence fell over the hall as Ye Cheng steeled himself. No matter how fearsome the adversary, he would prove once more why he reigned unchallenged at the pinnacle of the moon realm. Purple Thunder Saint's violet eyes flickered with impatience as he stood atop the observation dais in the silent hall. Could it be, he asked, voice low and tense, that the mountain-moving demon ape emerged before me? His attendant, already braced for bad news, dropped to one knee and bowed deeply. Your saintship, the progress of the secret realm assessments is recorded only by the college instructors and deacons. Outsiders have no way to verify the results. He paused, choosing his words carefully. All we know about the mountain-moving demon ape, it failed to complete its assessment. It was a direct descendant of the infamous clan, and the latest clan dispatch reports that its life plate was shattered. It has fallen, perished, in the God of War's mysterious realm. A hush fell over the chamber. Purple Thunder Saint's expression froze, shock and disbelief warring in his eyes. It fell in the secret realm? How is that possible? The attendant could not offer more than this single devastating report, but it was enough to leave the Purple Thunder Saint's heart thunderously heavy, and his mind racing with the implications of such a staggering loss. Ye Cheng, known throughout the Moon Realm as the Purple Thunder Saint, could hardly believe what he'd just witnessed. There's no way any mortal genius here could have laid low the mountain-moving demon ape, he told himself desperately. Unless it ran into an overwhelming monster tide by sheer misfortune. The very idea that someone in the Moon Realm might rival the demon ape's might felt impossible. At that moment, a new wave of prodigies emerged from the 12 hidden realms. First came Saint Qingping, princess of the Heavenly Wolf clan, followed by the young master of the Wood Spirit clan. One by one, other sect champions, each wielding their own secret techniques, stepped into the open. They had all passed the ordeal of the entrance examinations, earning the right to be the vanguard of this unprecedented exodus. As the last candidate crossed the threshold, a low rumble rolled across the skies above every major city in the Moon Realm. Then, with a golden flash, an imperial edict descended from the heavens. Its brilliance sparkled in the eyes of thousands of cultivators below, igniting fierce anticipation throughout the land. The moment the official roster appeared, a wave of excitement rippled through every exit of the secret realms. That's the list of those who passed the War God Academy's examination and have now become its official disciples, a herald announced, his voice booming like thunder. By my count, that's at least 20 geniuses who've completed the trial so far, another cultivator cried out. All around them, Moon Realm practitioners, among them Saint Qingping and the contingent who dueled Xiaoyiren in the 12th secret realm, held their breath. Even famed figures like the Purple Thunder Saint stared anxiously at the floating scroll, waiting for the next name to materialize. A moment of tense silence passed. Then, with a soft crackle of energy, a new entry glowed into being at the top of the list. Moon Realm. Nanshan Gate, Young Sect Master Murong Fang completion time, 2 months, 17 hours. A murmur swept through the crowd. Under the keen eyes of countless Moon Realm cultivators, Murong Fang's name shone brightest of all, 2 months and 17 hours. Such a record was nothing short of extraordinary. The moment Murong Fang's name appeared on the assessment roster, The air in the hall crackled with excitement. Though Nanshan Gate was never counted among the Moon Realm's top sects, it now boasted the first disciple ever to qualify as a formal disciple of the God of War Academy, and that distinction belonged to Murongfang. No one could deny the bright future awaiting both him and his home sect. As murmurs of admiration swept through the crowd, the roster continued to scroll, each new name greeted with anticipation. Ye Cheng, Chief Prince Qing Yuanchuan of Qingyin Valley. Ye Cheng, Young Master of the Nine Thunder Viper Clan. Ye Cheng, Young Master of the South China Sea Violent Shark Clan. One by one, 16 prodigies claimed their places. When the 15th name flashed across the board, the hall fell into a hushed silence, everyone leaning forward as the final announcement blinked into view. Moon Realm's Young Master of the Wood Spirit Clan. Ye Cheng. Assessment completed in 2 months and 3 hours. A collective gasp rippled through the cultivators. Completing the trial in such record time was unheard of. It surpassed even Murongfang's achievement. All eyes turned to the young master of the Wood Spirit Clan. Ye Cheng stood perfectly still, his expression unreadable as a frosty calm settled over him. In that instant, it was clear that a new legend was being born. As the Muling tribe's young master and the Moon Realm's foremost genius, Ye Cheng carried himself with unshakable pride and dignity. Before the assessment even began, he'd arrogantly dismissed every competitor, especially Xiaoyuan, refusing to acknowledge her as a true rival. Yet when the results were announced, his own name appeared only after those he considered formidable, like Saint Qingping. Even Xiaoyuan, whom he'd barely glanced at, had outranked him. The sting to his ego was unbearable. Just as Ye Cheng braced himself for further mortification, relief washed over him. Another name flashed on the board, the princess of the Tianlang tribe. And she'd completed the trial only a single incense stick's worth of time after he had. This meant their strengths were far closer than he'd feared. At that same moment, the princess of the Tianlang tribe frowned in disappointment upon seeing her name appear so early. Like Mu Ling's young master, the princess of the Heavenly Wolf clan felt a surge of relief when she saw that her completion time lagged by only 1 incense stick. In the God of War realm, each testing ground sprawls across vast, monster-filled wilderness, so even the most talented competitors must slow their pace to hunt worthy prey. A difference of 1 or 2 incense sticks, mere minutes, hardly reflects a true gap in power. "We're still neck and neck," she murmured. "It's impossible to tell who's stronger." No sooner had she spoken than Saint Qingping's name appeared on the roster, confirming her suspicion. He'd taken only half an incense stick more than she had. At the sight of his result, both the princess and Mu Ling's young master stiffened, their calm facades faltering as they sized up this new rival. Even the Purple Thunder Saint finally let out a long breath, his normally tense shoulders easing. After all, Saint Qingping has claimed the 19th spot on the list, he reminded himself. By rule, the ranking board only appears once over 20 challengers complete the God of War realm assessment, and with the Moving Mountain Demon Ape already defeated and thus struck from contention, there was now exactly 1 name left to fill that 20th slot. It had to be him, Saint Zilei. A confident, almost imperious light flickered in his eyes. He refused to accept any fluke. Sure, the official count might show 21 or even 22 successful candidates, but everyone knew how grueling the God of War realm test was. No one passed it by accident. "It can only be exactly 20 who trigger the appearance of the list," he murmured. Nearby, young Master Mu Ling and Princess Tianlang exchanged relieved smiles. Like the Purple Thunder Saint, they were equally certain that the remaining name belonged to their proud patron, Saint Zilei. Everyone had underestimated Xiaoyuan before the Secret Realm assessment began. When his name didn't show up on the standings at first, their unease only grew, until the next announcement dispelled their worries. Moon Realm, Purple Thunder Saint. He finished the assessment in 2 months. Purple Thunder Saint's voice rang out triumphantly as his name appeared at the top. Pride lit his eyes. Though his lead over the other prodigies was narrow, he basked in every moment of glory. Then, without warning, a low buzz reverberated through the hall. Purple Thunder Saint, the young master of Mu Ling, Princess Tianlang, and the rest all looked up at once, their relaxed expressions tightening into focused anticipation. On the projection screen, a new entry had slid into view, one that knocked Purple Thunder Saint from first place. Moon Realm, Ye Cheng. He completed the assessment in just 1 month. A stunned silence fell over the assembled geniuses. Ye Cheng's name now shone at the very top of the list, his breathtaking time eclipsing every expectation. I'd be happy to help, but I only see the 2 lines below. Could you please provide the full chapter text you'd like me to rewrite? Moon Realm, Luotian Gu Family, Gu Yiren. It took 10 days to complete the assessment. Chapter 483. When the tally appeared, Ye Cheng's name topped the golden list, and his completion time, a mere 10 days, radiated like a miniature sun, dazzling everyone present. The Moon Realm's finest, Purple Thunder Saint, Wood Spirit Young Master, Heavenly Wolf Princess, had all shared that secret assessment realm with him, and knew how swiftly he'd finished. Yet even they couldn't hide their shock when they saw the official rankings laid bare. Especially Purple Thunder Saint and the others who had once sneered at Ye Cheng, their previous arrogance now curdled into bitter shame. Across the courtyard, numerous Moon Realm cultivators gaped at the list, whispering in awe. He completed the assessment in 10 days? Who is Ye Cheng? That's impossible, even extraordinary. Luotian Gu Family. What clan is that? I've never heard the name. Doesn't matter if you haven't. Names mean nothing against results like this. Remember this name, Ye Cheng, and find any way you can to uncover his family's origins. And whatever you learn, do not underestimate them. Proceed with caution, and if possible, show them respect. Well said. That's exactly the right approach. One by one, the Moon Realm's masters exchanged nods, their voices hushed with awe at Ye Cheng's achievement and at the formidable Gu clan standing behind him. Just as excitement reached a fever pitch across the realm, elsewhere, in the ancestral lands of the mountain-moving demon ape clan, the mountain-moving saint, current head of the lineage, glowered at the war god golden list hanging in the sky. His eyes were bloodshot, his gaze brimming with murderous intent. The saint's grandson, the young demon ape prodigy, had already outstripped the elder's own youthful prowess. And with the northern wilderness entering a golden age, backed by the saint's tutelage and protection, this young ape's rise into the Tao realm and his bid for a domain master seat seemed all but assured. Yet as the saint stared upward, barely containing his wrath, it was clear he would do anything to prevent such an ascendancy. The mountain-moving saint's ambitions for the entire mountain-moving demon ape lineage had once seemed within reach. But all of that hope has now evaporated in the face of Ye Cheng's meteoric rise. How can the mountain-moving saint possibly endure such an affront? Luotian Gu clan? Ye Cheng? Excellent, just excellent, he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. Bloodshot eyes blazing, he ground his fangs together. He'd already dispatched his vassals to gather intelligence and learned that his cherished grandson had set out to challenge Ye Cheng. Now, word had come back that his grandson had fallen beneath Ye Cheng's hand. In no more than 10 days, this upstart had not only defeated a member of the mountain-moving saint's own family, but had also breezed through the God of War Academy's entrance exam, earning official student status. Fury roared within him. Yet the mountain-moving saint forced himself to calm down. He knew better than to retaliate hastily, especially now that Ye Cheng was firmly under the God of War Academy's protection. An all-out attack at this moment would be suicide, so for the time being, he would wait and stew. The moment to strike would come soon enough. Saint Lord mentors who discovered Ye Cheng would almost certainly see him safely to the God of War Academy themselves. If the mountain-moving saint struck now, those Saint Lords could intervene and slay him before he ever completed his vengeance. Yet he cared nothing for caution. His heart burned with a single purpose, to avenge his grandson's murder. Even if the boy had provoked Ye Cheng first, no excuse could soften the rage in the old saint's chest. This little human upstart must die. Only then can I quench the hatred that festers within me. There has to be a way. A sudden flash of determination lit his eyes. The God of War Academy was the premier sacred ground across the northern wilderness continent, but it was not without rivals. Chief among them stood the All Saints Immortal Academy, an ancient institution built by the fabled myriad races themselves. Ye Cheng looked up at the horizon, determination blazing in his eyes. With my current strength, I'm more than qualified to join the All Saints Immortal Academy as a mentor, he declared. Once inside, he could guide the Academy's prodigies to clash with the God of War Academy from within, all the while engineering the perfect moment to eliminate Xianxia. His chance at revenge would skyrocket. Wasting no time, the mountain-shifting Saint Lord activated his divine transference array. In the blink of an eye, he departed the Moon Realm and set his course for the All Saints Immortal Academy. Deep within the God of War Academy's territory stood the 10,000 Dao Hall, its 9 soaring stories lost in the celestial mists. Thunderous arches of jade and gold glimmered with divine light, and fine clouds of immortal essence drifted between each tier. Mere mortals felt their souls quake at the sight. This was the crown jewel of the Academy's cultivation grounds, the 10,000 Dao Palace. Here, 1 day's practice equaled 100 days of effort in the outside world. Even Ye Cheng, already a domain lord, felt his pulse quicken at the thought of training within these hallowed halls. He pressed his palm to the jade balustrade and inhaled the palace's potent aura. Soon, he told himself, he would harness its power to thwart his enemies and finally settle the score with Xianxia. Mo Jinyi, the Grandmaster of Wandao Palace, stood before its towering gates, anticipation shining in his eyes. It had been over a month since Ye Cheng entered seclusion within the palace, an interval equivalent to nearly 10 years of cultivation in the outside world. Her talent was unparalleled in Mo Jinyi's long life, and she had even acquired the legacy of Yuan Yue Zhenxian. Once she emerged from her retreat, Mo Jinyi dared not imagine how vastly her power would have increased. Just as he was lost in thought, a soft rush of wind announced the arrival of several figures. They flew down from the main hall, each clad in the same ornate brocade robes that marked them as members of Wandao Palace and the Ares Academy, the palace emblem embroidered across their chests. These were Mo Jinyi's deputy hall masters, men of considerable rank and authority in their own right, but now their faces were clouded with unease. Ye Cheng, master of Wandao Hall, sat motionless in his private chamber. A young attendant knocked and peered inside. Master Ye Cheng, deputies from Shadow Hall and Tiangong Hall have arrived to see you. Ye Cheng opened a single eye. Tell them there's no meeting today, or any time in the future. Wandao Palace is closed to outsiders. The attendant's eyes widened, but he merely bowed and slipped away. In the corridor, the visiting deputies lingered, tongues tied by surprise and frustration. After all, although Wandao, Shadao, and Tiangong Halls all fell under the banner of War God Academy, they had never been so isolated. Instructors and disciples routinely exchanged cultivation techniques, traded rare resources, even shared time on legendary training devices. Wandao Hall's crowning glory, the Wandao Tiangong, had long been loaned out for just such collaborations. Yet since Master Gu had returned to the academy, escorting the young girl Ye Cheng, he'd acted like a man possessed. He locked his doors against his fellow halls, refused every visitor, and declared his treasures off-limits. Word spread quickly. Wandao Hall had been sealed shut at the whim of its hall master, and no one dared challenge him. The Wandao Hall has poured its most precious artifact, the Wandao Tiangong, into Ye Cheng's cultivation for an extended period. You can scarcely imagine the volume of rare materials and treasures consumed in just 1 day to power the Wandao Palace's opening. It's so vast that even an ordinary Saint King would be hard-pressed to shoulder the cost. And yet, Ye Cheng has been named both the prospective palace master and the official mentor of the hall. Remember, when she first joined the War God Academy, her cultivation hadn't even reached the Emperor realm, let alone Saint King. Even with months of training in the Wandao Hall, she'd at best break through to the venerable level, and that's not guaranteed. The paradox of genius is that the more gifted someone is, the longer it sometimes takes to shatter their next realm barrier. Don't get me wrong, Palace Master clearly values Ye Cheng above all, and her talent truly is exceptional. She's easily one of the top freshmen of our entire generation at the War God Academy. But appointing her as a mentor already? That seems, well, a bit premature. Chapter 484. Word spread swiftly through the northern wilderness provinces. the God of War Academy's newest recruits had begun trickling back to headquarters. Once every recruit had arrived, the Academy's annual freshman tournament would commence, an event that drew every hall instructor, Wandao Hall's Ye Ruoshui included. But this time, the announcement left several deputy hallmasters simmering with unease. Ye Ruoshui was still below venerable rank, her cultivation strength markedly inferior even to many of the incoming students, and yet she had been appointed to coach the fresh faces at Wandao Hall. If rumors of this arrangement reached the wider academy, Ye Ruoshui's reputation would suffer a severe blow. The prestige of Wandao Hall itself hung in the balance. It wasn't just the 3 or 4 senior leaders within Wandao who balked. Instructors and students from the other halls whispered that Grandmaster Yuan Jinyi's decision made no sense. Normally, any of them might have objected outright, but Yuan Jinyi's standing in the academy was such that even these deputy hallmasters dared not voice criticism. Still, none of that stopped them from losing sleep over the impending spectacle. How could a girl whose cultivation level lagged behind the very students she was meant to instruct preside over this all-important competition? The answer to that question weighed heavily on their minds as they watched the new recruits file through the gates, each step bringing them closer to a showdown that promised to upend the Academy's carefully maintained hierarchy. The murmurs in the halls of Wandao Palace had only just begun. "It's one thing to let that little girl tread the palace grounds," one deputy palace master grumbled, "but to hand her the title of mentor so casually, has the old palace master lost his wits?" "Alas," sighed another, "I can scarcely believe it." Their complaints died on their lips the moment a brilliant rainbow of divine light erupted in the grand hall of the 6th floor. All eyes snapped upward and froze. "Impossible! Ye Ruoshui has already reached the 6th floor of Wandao Palace?" one of them whispered, disbelief cracking his voice. "In a single month, she's broken through into the venerable realm and attained the Xuanzun stage?" another gasped. They all knew the hierarchy of Wandao Palace. 9 floors, each corresponding to one of the 9 realms of the human world. Only those who ascend to the venerable realm may pass into the 6th floor of the heavenly palace. Yet when Ye Ruoshui first set foot in the 10,000 Dao heavenly palace, she'd barely scratched the imperial stage. How, then, had she vaulted not only into the venerable realm, but also onto the 6th floor in so astonishingly short a time? Moreover, she had been born with immortal longevity and carried the grace of the fairy spirit's heavenly endowment, which made her strength at every level far outstrip that of ordinary cultivators. Yet the spiritual resources she needed for each breakthrough were proportionally greater. A typical prodigy, even with all the rare treasures and medicinal materials at their disposal, would still require 10 years or more to reach the venerable tier. For Ye Ruoshui, without a century's worth of accumulation, that goal would remain out of reach. Even when the 10,000 Dao heavenly palace accelerated her cultivation 100-fold, it would still take at least a year. And yet now, in just over a month, she's broken through to venerable and even stepped into the Xuanzun realm. How did this girl manage that? Every senior official in the heavenly palace stared in disbelief. Only Yuan Jinyi, who knew the secret behind her rapid rise, remained unshaken. Yes, Ye Ruoshui had begun her training from a lower base and suffered setbacks early on. But her luck, if not her talent, had always been extraordinary. The greatest treasure of the Yuanyue secret realm was the inheritance fruit left behind by Yuanyue Zhenxian, a vessel containing much of his cultivation power from before his ascension. Centuries of erosion, leached away much of that energy, but what remains is still on par with a domain master's own strength. For Ye Ruoshui to claim the Yuanyue divine treasure is essentially like having a domain master at her beck and call. The moment she activates it, she taps into a vast reservoir of divine essence. That essence will serve as her nutrient, fueling her progress so long as she trains in an environment suited to its power. Under the legacy of Yuanyue Zhenxian's inheritance fruit, her cultivation will advance at breakneck speed. This was precisely why Yuan Jinyi had the boldness to appoint Ye Ruoshui as a mentor within Wandao Hall and even nominate her as its future leader. "Now's not the time to be shocked," he teased, glancing at his subordinates with a knowing smile. "Wait until you see her next breakthrough. it'll be even more terrifying. With a final nod, Yuan Jinyi turned on his heel and strode away, leaving behind only the deputy hallmasters of Wandao Hall to exchange awed glances. They exchanged amused glances before bursting into laughter. "We're simply not as far-sighted as the hallmaster," one of the deputies admitted with a wry smile. "His vision spans decades, even centuries ahead of ours." "Exactly," another chimed in. "Honestly, I can't wait for the freshman tournament. By then, I'm sure Wandao Hall will outshine every other sect." A few of the deputies leaned forward eagerly, their eyes flicking toward the distant silhouette of the 10,000 Dao Heavenly Palace. In just 1 month, Yi Ruoshui had shattered the Xuanzun barrier, and they all wondered what heights she might reach before the competition began. Daozun? Or perhaps even the fabled Xuandi realm? Such rapid advancement was astonishing, even with the palace's blessings. After all, breaking through a realm demanded more than raw spiritual power. It required profound insight into the great Tao and an unparalleled mastery of its laws. And if anyone could achieve that in mere months, it was undoubtedly Yi Ruoshui. Ye Cheng watched Yi Ruoshui in stunned silence. No amount of Wandao Palace's 100-fold cultivation acceleration could explain her sudden grasp of the Dao's deeper principles. If she truly breaks through to the Xuan Emperor realm so quickly, she will eclipse nearly every prodigy of our Beihuang generation and seize the very summit of our world's history. And she's only 16 or 17. At that age, most cultivators are still mastering basic foundation establishment techniques, yet her insight into the Tao is already powerful enough to carry her into Xuan Emperor territory. Give her a few more years, and who knows how far her brilliance will shine. In the entire annals of the Northern Wilderness Divine Continent, the record for the youngest Xuan Emperor was set 3 million years ago. He reigned as the unrivaled titan of his era and, alone among mortals, ascended to the immortal plane. If Yi Ruoshui's advance continues unabated, she may well rewrite that legend in our own time. Word has it he's already become a void heavenly immortal. When he reached that level, it took him 89 years of cultivation. But this young master Yi Ruoshui could shatter that record, perhaps even before 50. The deputy hall masters of the 10,000 Dao Hall leaned forward, eyes alight with excitement. A heavenly immortal under 50, trained in their God of War academy, what greater honor could there be? While they reveled in speculation, far to the west in the sprawling wilderness of the Luoshenggu estate, where spiritual energy throbbed thickest, Ye Cheng opened his eyes. He lifted a single hand, and with a resounding boom, an immense tide of power burst forth. A vast, boundless surge of spiritual energy poured from him, far purer and deeper than that of even a Saint King's Peak cultivation. As his technique awakened, the very air around him hummed with raw, unstoppable force. A surge of power erupted within Ye Cheng, as if an emperor had awakened to reclaim his dominion. The pressure radiating from him was so overwhelming that, the moment he opened his eyes, the entire Luotian Academy quaked. The very sky and earth seemed to shift hue, rumbling with thunder as calamity clouds thickened overhead. Countless cultivators in the academy froze mid-breath, craning their necks toward the heart of the spiritual land where Ye Cheng had been in retreat. Shock and awe painted their faces. "My lord has emerged from seclusion," someone cried. "That aura! He's ascended to the Emperor realm." Another whispered, voice trembling. Taiyan, Huoling, Mu Fentian, and all the Gu family's vassal masters stared in stunned silence. This display of might shattered every preconception they held about power, hearts pounding, breaths coming in ragged gasps. If memory serves, he's not even 25 yet. An emperor in his early 20s? They echoed in disbelief, eyes wide with wonder. That alone has shattered the void heavenly immortal's old record by a full 60 years. A roar rose up through Luoshan Academy. Every cultivator present was electrified, yet Ye Cheng remained perfectly composed. He had expected nothing less. Feeling the divine power surging through his veins, he offered a slight nod. With this newfound strength, I should now set out for the War God Academy. But one task still awaited him. He raised his hand, and the War God Order, bestowed on him by Lord Yuan Sheng, floated forward. The talisman flickered, projecting a line of text before his eyes. His next destination was the Moon Realm. There, a band of prodigies had just cleared the final barrier of the War God Mystery Realm, completing their academy entrance trials. They were now without a guide, waiting for a mentor to usher them safely to the War God Academy. As their appointed master, I can't let them linger, Ye Cheng murmured. He cast a casual glance toward the reception area and prepared to depart. Ye Cheng didn't even bother to glance at the list of students awaiting guidance. He slipped the Order of the War God back into his sash, summoned Mufentian and the others, issued his instructions, wrapped up the final arrangements in the wilderness, and set off without delay. Meanwhile, in the Moon Realm, the last group of prodigies trapped in the temporal trial stood impatiently among the floating isles, their eyes bright with expectation as they waited for their mentor's arrival. Among them, one figure in particular would have been instantly recognizable to Ye Cheng, Princess Xianxia of the Yueling clan, a celebrated wilderness genius whom he had encountered on several past occasions. Chapter 485. Far out on the windswept plains of the Gu clan's Luotian territory, hundreds of vassal masters knelt before a high ridge. There, standing tall and resolute, was Ye Cheng. Under the watchful gaze of Taiyan Huoling, every subordinate's eyes burned with fanatic devotion and respect. None could deny how astonishing it was that this young emperor in his early 20s had already broken through cultivation limits at such speed. "Your Highness," Taiyan Huoling intoned, voice ringing across the gathering, "rest assured, we will defend the Gu clan of Luotian and our stronghold here in the wilderness to our last breath. No foe shall threaten your Highness's realm." Mufentian and the other vassal masters echoed the vow in a thunderous chorus. Ye Cheng inclined his head in acknowledgement, but instead of moving out, he paused and tapped the surface of his storage ring. In an instant, 4 radiant arcs of divine light, a quartet of sword beams infused with lethal intent, sliced through the air. They streaked away in perfect formation to the east, west, south, and north of the old Luotian Academy, now officially renamed Luotian City. Boom! A momentary tremor rolled through the ground. Every master of the Gu clan felt a razor-sharp, formidable aura surge up from Luotian City, then vanish as suddenly as it had appeared. It was as if that powerful presence had been nothing more than a phantom, leaving behind only the faintest echo of its might. Only Taiyan Huoling, Mufentian, and the other Holy Path practitioners sensed that this was no mere illusion, but a genuine surge of power. In Luotian City, alongside the protective formation Ye Cheng had already cast, another, far more formidable, barrier now held sway. A supreme killing formation capable not only of blocking, but of obliterating even a holy lord. The Immortal Sword Formation. Taiyan Huoling's eyes snapped up to Ye Cheng, shock and concern warring in his gaze. This was the deadliest technique Ye Cheng had acquired from the system, a true immortal secret and peerless arcane art. Every senior of the Gu family knew its name and its fearsome potency. And yet, as Ye Cheng prepared to depart for the God of War Academy, he had chosen to leave this ultimate killing formation behind in Luotian City. "Your Highness, are you certain?" Taiyan Huoling pressed. "Between the protective formation you've woven and the city's natural defenses, we can handle any would-be invader." "Don't worry," Ye Cheng smiled, brushing off the objection with a casual wave. Then, whoosh! A quartet of 4th-tier killing swords materialized behind Ye Cheng, each blade more dreadful and potent than the 4 Zhuxian swords he had left to guard Luotian City. Integrated into his Zhuxian sword formation, these peerless weapons bathed the sky in a ghostly light. Their combined killing aura rolled out like an abyssal wave, so overwhelming that even the very formation Ye Cheng had just deployed groaned under the strain. What kind of sword is that?" One of the Gu clan's vassal masters whispered, wide-eyed. "A top-rank sacred weapon? But His Highness's own 4-fold killing sword stationed here was already said to be unrivaled." Across the courtyard, Taiyan, Huoling, and Mufentian shared the same stunned expression. They all recognized those blades, headed by the famed Suzaku Tianyin and its 3 sister weapons, the legendary swords Ye Cheng had wielded since his exploits in Nanchuan Shenzhou. Now arrayed together, their power pressed down on Luotian City like a living nightmare. After Ye Cheng poured in his blood and performed the final sacrifices, all 4 slaughtering swords were refined to the very limit of their rank. Even the reigning Saint King would covet such weapons. Each was a masterpiece of Saint King grade. Yet now, neither Suzaku Tianyin nor the other three top-tier holy swords could hold a candle to the quartet of immortal-slaying swords. Ye Cheng had just summoned. If Suzaku Tianyin's fourfold blade was a towering mountain, then Ye Cheng's was an entire whirl. No mere peak could rival a complete realm. The 4 vermilion bird swords will remain in Luotian City, Ye Cheng announced with a confident smile. Between them and the formation I set, the city can repel even the Saint King's onslaught. Rest assured, its safety is guaranteed. With that, he drew his newly reforged immortal-slaying swords from behind him. Without another hesitation, he stepped onto the swirling clouds and shot toward the moon realm, leaving Tian Huoling and the others staring after him in awe. As Ye Cheng traveled, he couldn't help but think of the 4 newly acquired swords resting quietly in his storage ring. A bright gleam of excitement shone in his eyes. The heirlooms left behind by true immortals Yuanwu and Tianhuang are truly unbelievable, he murmured. Indeed, these 4 Wujiguo swords were the inheritance reward he had earned at Yuanwu Mansion. And the swords weren't the only boon they'd bestowed. Since claiming those treasures, Ye Cheng's cultivation had soared to the Emperor realm, and his insight into swordsmanship had advanced by leaps and bounds, all thanks to the blessings hidden within Yuanwu Mansion. Just a few months earlier, while Xiao Yiren had ventured into the mysterious realm of the God of War, Ye Cheng, having just perfected his Saint Emperor Realm foundation, set out for Yuanwu Mansion himself. There, he endured a second round of inheritance trials, this time calibrated to assess true saint-level cultivators. Yet in structure and rigor, the challenges mirrored those he had faced during the quasi-saint assessment and proved every bit as demanding. The trial was officially open to all cultivators of the Saint Realm, but its difficulty was so extreme that even Ye Cheng still winces at the memory. He was only able to undertake it because he heeded the counsel of the 3 Saint Lords, led by Ji Shan, who urged him to wait until he reached the peak of the Saint Emperor Realm and had stockpiled sufficient resources. Had he gone sooner, he doubted he'd have broken through all 3 trial stages in a single attempt. Yet the challenge's reputation was matched by its rewards. Passing this assessment would unlock a far broader selection of treasures within Yuanwu Mansion. In the end, Ye Cheng claimed 3 priceless artifacts. Among them was the sword-meaning monument, left behind long ago by a domain master who had attained sword domain perfection. Through its inscriptions, Ye Cheng not only grasped the true essence of the sword realm, but, in just a few months, advanced his own sword cultivation to the level of sword domain minor completion. Sword domain completion is merely the first milestone, the instructor continued, voice grave. Beyond it lie 4 higher stages, sword domain minor completion, sword domain great completion, and ultimately, sword domain perfection. In the northern wilderness divine continent, now that the great world has unfolded, ever more domain masters will surely emerge. Yet among them, fully 99% will stall at the Dao realm. Advancing to Dao domain minor completion is already a colossal challenge. Ascending further to Dao domain great completion or achieving Dao domain perfection is virtually unheard of. With the great world's opening, spiritual energy sweeps across the land like an endless tide, accelerating cultivation to heights previously unimaginable. But once one reaches the Dao domain stage, deepening one's understanding of the Dao demands something far more than raw power. A single breakthrough past this threshold might require centuries, or even millennia, of relentless practice and profound insight. That Ye Cheng could elevate his sword domain from the initial stage to minor completion in just a few months speaks not only to his prodigious talent, but also to the extraordinary aid of the sword-meaning monument. Its support was nothing short of miraculous, allowing him to shatter barriers that would normally take ages to overcome. Ye Cheng stood before the sword-meaning monument, his eyes alight with determination. Even at his slowest pace, he murmured, within 10 years I will master the perfection of the sword domain and begin to influence the sword world itself, attaining the Dao perception of a true realm master. 10 years. To most people, that estimate would have sounded lunatic. Yet Ye Cheng knew it was wildly conservative. Between the Tao meaning monument's power, his multiple fate tokens, and the system's blessing, he might shatter that boundary in barely 2 or 3 years, perhaps even sooner. Beyond the monument, he had already spent 2 of his most precious chances. The first secured him a set of 4 Domain Lord tier killing swords, a lethal upgrade to replace his aging Xianxia sword formation. The second chance procured him a rare Realm Lord tier artifact, the Imitation Heaven Mirror. Legends held that the mirror was refined from the very essence of a true Taoist who had reached the pinnacle of Tao cultivation in the long-forgotten Northern Emperor Divine Continent. With such a treasure in hand, Ye Cheng felt the gap to the Realm Master tier narrowing by the day. And he would leave nothing to chance. When the moment came, he would strike, and the sword world itself would tremble. Ye Cheng turned the strange mirror over in his hands, noting that it bore no edges sharp enough to cut, nor any surface sturdy enough to block an attack. Yet it held a power unlike anything he'd ever seen. A single, extraordinary function: imitation. This rare treasure, known as the Imitation Heaven Mirror, was capable of drawing in the ambient energies, those lingering breaths of force left behind by every formidable opponent Ye Cheng had ever faced. Once it had absorbed those auras, the mirror could project perfect replicas of those fighters back at him. Through these spectral duels, Ye Cheng could measure his own skill against their every technique. In its most advanced demonstrations, the mirror could even reproduce an adversary at the 3rd Tao Lord level, allowing Ye Cheng to spar with a foe far beyond his current rank. Yet the mirror's greatest value lay in its ability to turn its mimicry inward. By reflecting Ye Cheng's own martial strength back at him, it forced him to confront his weaknesses head-on. Each battle against his own projection revealed flaws in his stance, gaps in his technique, and wasted motions. Armed with that insight, he could target his training to remedy those very shortcomings. Eager to unlock its secrets, Ye Cheng spent the next hours testing the mirror's limits. He summoned echoes of the Valley Bandit who had once cornered him and the mercenary swordsman who'd narrowly escaped his strike. Each encounter sharpened his senses and expanded the reach of his cultivation. But the greatest surprise came when he attempted to recreate the aura of Old Man Yuan Sheng. According to every account, Yuan Sheng was only an early-stage domain master. Powerful, certainly, but far from the highest echelons of martial hierarchy. When the mirror's image of Yuan Sheng formed before him, however, Ye Cheng froze. The spectral figure moved with a precision and force that belied its supposed level. With a single flow of qi, it sent shockwaves rippling through the training ground, far surpassing anything Ye Cheng had ever experienced from an early domain master. Leaning closer, Ye Cheng felt the truth settle in his bones. Old Man Yuan Sheng may only wear the title of early-stage domain master, but his true power is leagues beyond what he's ever led on. Chapter 486. During his saint-level assessment at Master Yuanwu's abandoned estate, Ye Cheng faced a final trial against a war puppet that had just reached the early domain lord realm. To ensure fairness, all of his magical powers, including the fearsome immortal execution sword formation, were sealed away. Stripped of arcane arts, he had no choice but to rely on pure physical might. Fortunately, Ye Cheng had already pushed his cultivation to the very peak of the Saint Emperor realm before stepping into the test chamber, and his body had been tempered to superhuman toughness. Had he not done so, the war puppet might very well have overwhelmed him. When the clash finally ended, Ye Cheng claimed the promised reward, the Imitation Heaven Mirror. Immediately afterward, he pressed the war puppet back into service as his test subject. Pouring in a fresh cache of spirit crystals, he calibrated the puppet's power across multiple tiers. Then, to push his own limits, he deployed every secret weapon in his arsenal, from the immortal execution sword formation to the purple chi cauldron of all living beings. By the time the experiments concluded, Ye Cheng had sharpened his understanding of his own strength to a razor's edge. Everything now lay in sharp relief: his advantages, his weaknesses, and the precise level he had achieved in this perilous world of cultivators. After refining countless treasures, including the Sword Intention Monument, Ye Cheng finally ascended to the Emperor realm. His Tao intention perception now registered as a minor triumph within the sword domain, and his baseline combat prowess had climbed to the late stage of a domain lord. With trump cards like the purple chi cauldron of all living beings or the immortal executioner's sword formation at his command, even a perfect domain lord-level war puppet would stand no chance against him. And yet, Ye Cheng couldn't shake one lingering memory, his final duel before setting out on this journey. That day, he activated the imitation heaven mirror and, drawing on archived data, summoned a projection of Ye Cheng, a vice dean at the God of War Academy. According to all the records, Vice Dean Ye Cheng's cultivation should not have exceeded the early Domain Lord stage. At best, he barely entered mid-stage. So how had that projection given Ye Cheng such a hard fight? He never expected that when the Ye Cheng Domain Lord finally stepped out of the imitation heaven mirror, his aura would already be at the very pinnacle of Domain Lord cultivation. His combat prowess was enough to shatter even a perfected war puppet. No matter how many trump cards Ye Cheng unleashed, no matter how hard he pushed his own strength, he could only hope to hold his ground against Domain Master Ye Cheng. What unsettled him even more was the unmistakable sense that this mirrored projection of Ye Cheng was far from complete. This senior figure, the Deputy Dean Ye Cheng had personally recommended to join the God of War Academy, must be hiding secret techniques and trump cards that even a marvel like the imitation heaven mirror could not fully capture. If he were to unleash that hidden ace, ordinary domain lords wouldn't stand a chance against him. The realization struck Ye Cheng with both shock and exhilaration. If Ye Cheng himself was this formidable, then the God of War Academy's foundations must be extraordinary indeed. With Xianxia also slated to arrive soon, Ye Cheng knew that once they both stepped through the Academy's gates, they would stand to gain far more than they ever could have imagined. Ye Cheng couldn't help but smile as he thought of Xianxia. Ever since he left the retreat, two pieces of exciting news had arrived. First, his acceptance letter from Ares Academy. Second, a personal letter from Xianxia herself. Word was that she'd already made a name for herself back in the Moon Realm, and had entered Ares Academy boasting the title of the greatest prodigy of her generation. She really is the kind of daughter I'd be proud to have, he mused. With that thought spurring him on, Ye Cheng quickened his pace. In just 3 days, he covered the distance to the Moon Realm and arrived on the outskirts of Yuanjiang City, the designated meeting point for the Continental freshmen who'd secured their places at Ares Academy in the final round of assessments. The city's central plaza was already crowded with nearly 100 young geniuses. Most hovered around the Xuan Emperor realm in cultivation, though a handful had just broken through into the Heavenly Emperor realm. Yuanjiang City was one of Yuejing's most celebrated strongholds. Its rulers were all saint kings, and within its walls resided dozens of saints and saint kings, not to mention a host of quasi-saints. Ye Cheng surveyed the crowd, excitement and anticipation pulsing through him. Soon, he would step onto Ares Academy's legendary grounds and reunite with Xianxia. Even the Saint Dao elders gazing toward Yuanjiang City Square could not hide the emotion shining in their eyes. Below them, ordinary cultivators in the city watched with envious glances as a group of young prodigies prepared to set off for the God of War Academy. Today, most of these youths had only reached the Xuan Emperor or Tian Emperor realms, but in a few short years they might return as Saint Kings or even Saint Dao themselves. The quasi-saints of the present would one day have to look up to their accomplishments. Feeling the eager stares upon them, the newly admitted students brimmed with pride. Among them were Ye Cheng and Xianxia, the last to clear the grueling entrance examination. Simply passing the trial felt infinitely better than failing it and losing the chance to study at the academy. Having overcome countless hardships and vanquished powerful foes along the way, their hearts now swelled with excitement. Ahead lay a path of legend, and they were more than ready to walk it. I can hardly imagine what awaits us at the God of War Academy. The breathtaking landscapes we'll traverse, the powerful foes we'll face, and the grueling training that lies ahead. Even the entrance exam was a grand spectacle. By contrast, the academy itself must be built on an unshakable foundation, offering rewards beyond our wildest dreams. Their hearts pounded at the thought. Xianxia stood among the other prodigies, anticipation sparking in her eyes. Just as excitement threatened to overwhelm her, a streak of light tore across the sky outside Yuanzhang City. In the next instant, Ye Cheng descended on his flying boat, moving with a calm, assured grace. His aura, wrought by his mastery of the ancient scroll of the beginning, was profound and elusive. Unless he chose to reveal it, not even a saint king could gauge his true cultivation. And yet, from his commanding presence and the fierce life force radiating around him, everyone knew this was no ordinary young man. This was a rare genius, arriving to claim his place among legends. Another prodigy has arrived. Look, he's rushing into Yuanzhang City even now, and he's passed the War God Academy's entrance trial. But his ranking is the lowest of all this year's freshmen. He's dead last. A young cultivator muttered under his breath, only to be snapped at by his companions. Keep your voice down. Want to bring shame on our sect? Exactly. Even if he placed last, he still earned admission to the War God Academy. He could become a saint one day. Who are we to mock him? All around the city, cultivators exchanged excited whispers as they watched Ye Cheng's spirit vessel glide overhead. Awe shone on their faces. Many elders, those with disciples or talented children awaiting their own tests, looked on enviously, wishing the youth standing so confidently on the deck were theirs. A group of other academy-bound prodigies gathered in the square, observing Ye Cheng with calm interest. A few young women among them flushed at the sight of him, drawing irritated glances from some of their male peers. High above the city walls, on the deck of his sleek spirit boat, Ye Cheng stood tall and composed. He welcomed the murmurs and stares with only the faintest curl of his lips, his dark eyes bright with determination. Though ranked last among this year's fresh recruits, he felt no shame, only burning resolve to prove himself worthy of the War God Academy name. Everyone in the hall turned to Ye Cheng with thinly veiled resentment. Yet before anyone dared speak, Xianxia stepped forward. Ye Cheng, I never expected we'd meet again so soon. At her words, Ye Cheng lifted his head, genuine surprise flickering in his dark eyes. He had scarcely registered Xianxia before, and the entire Yueling clan had long since faded from his thoughts. Had she not called his name, he might never have noticed this familiar face among the assembled crowd. Xianxia, however, read his surprise as embarrassment, and perhaps even as shame, and she straightened her posture, her expression growing ever more haughty. In that instant, the old grudge the Yueling clan harbored for having to bow before the Gu family seemed to vanish. After all, more than 100 prodigies had scraped through the entrance exam in Yuanzhang City, each eager to prove themselves. Yet even among so many talents, differences remained, and Princess Xianxia stood undeniably at the top of her class. Thanks to her Emperor Realm cultivation and the blessing of her first-generation Yueling bloodline, Princess Xianxia finished all her exam objectives 10 days ahead of the entrance deadline, earning third place among this final cohort of God of War candidates. Ye Cheng, by contrast, arrived at the very last moment, wrapping up his exam just as the final incense stick flickered out. His performance only confirmed Xianxui's long-held theory. I've said it before, she declared, her voice cool and triumphant. If you rely solely on outside aids, failure is inevitable. Yet here you stand, with no helpers and still able to advance this far. That's genuinely admirable. She pointed a slender finger at him, equal parts praise and challenge. Ye Cheng chuckled softly, unwilling to dignify her smug tone with a response. In his eyes, her proud display was no different than a child bragging about a new toy. Getting worked up over it would only make him look ridiculous. His silence, however, drew sharp whispers of indignation from the other prodigies assembled nearby. The male prodigies, still smarting from the way Ye Cheng had always eclipsed them, were already simmering with resentment. Now, seeing Miss Xianxia, whom they all worshipped as the unrivaled beauty of their generation, treat him so casually only fanned the flames of their jealousy. When Ye Cheng didn't return her greeting, a few of them could no longer hold back. One of the braver, or perhaps more insolent, stood and sneered. "Young man, you'd best show some respect. Didn't you hear what Miss Xianxia said to you just now?" Ye Cheng barely glanced at them. He swept his eyes across the assembled crowd, confirmed that no one was missing, and then waved his hand with a casual flick. Ignoring the sycophants whose faces burned with envy, he announced, "All right, everyone's here. Follow me. Let's get moving to the academy. I'm sure you've been looking forward to this day." With that, he turned and strode off, the others hastening to keep pace behind him. Ye Cheng retracted the spirit boat he'd used to arrive, and, with a soft hum of energy, summoned a dark golden skyboat from the war god golden talisman that Lord Yuan Sheng had entrusted to him. The vessel's hull was etched with intricate array symbols, pulsing with a potent Taoist qi, so formidable that even a Saint King's assault would struggle to penetrate its defenses. A banner snapped overhead on the deck, catching the eyes of every onlooker in Yuanzhang City, Chen Shui and the other prodigies among them. Emblazoned on the flag was the unmistakable crest of the War God Academy, its warhorse insignia billowing proudly in the wind. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "That's the War God skyboat. Only Academy instructors ever pilot one. How could Ye Cheng possibly have it?" Astonishment and envy flared in equal measure as all eyes turned to him, the young cultivator who now commanded the legendary vessel. Chapter 487. In the open square, Xianxia stood frozen, her eyes locked on the war god skyboat that Ye Cheng had just summoned. Disbelief and panic churned in her chest, stealing her breath. War god skyboat, the very name rang like thunder in her ears. In that moment, she finally recognized who he truly was, but pride and vanity held her tongue, refusing to let her admit the truth. Ye Cheng ignored Xianxui's stunned silence. He swept a cold, contemptuous gaze over the circle of young men clustered before him, aspiring geniuses of the War God Academy, all of them mesmerized by his display. His voice cut through the hush like ice. "So it was me you dared to question just a moment ago?" Color drained from their faces. The ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble as their knees gave way. Though these youths had earned places at the prestigious academy, none had expected to stand before the true Emperor of War. Their eyes widened in fear, and even the promise of a brilliant future could not steady their shaking limbs. Even the formal students who'd enrolled early at the God of War Academy, like Gu Yiren, champion of the Moon Realm and slayer of the mountain-moving demon ape, would never dream of insulting an instructor. Yet here they were, groveling at Ye Cheng's feet. "We humbly beg your forgiveness, instructor. We were wrong." Terrified, the prodigies cast aside every shred of pride. They sank to their knees and kowtowed so fervently that onlookers could hardly believe their eyes. "My goodness, this God of War instructor is truly formidable," someone murmured. "He actually forced these top students to bow their heads and admit their faults." In Yuanzhang City's great square, cultivators pressed in on every side, riveted by the spectacle. Whispers of awe rippled through the crowd. None had seen such a display of authority before. Ye Cheng surveyed the cringing prodigies, lifted a single brow, and made no move to chastise them further. Their self-abasement was punishment enough. Just as he turned to lead them away, intent on uncovering the real reason behind their shame, an unexpected stir rose from the assembled cultivators. At the foot of the academy's grand courtyard, a group of students knelt on the cool stone, resentment burning in their eyes as they glared up at their teacher. "Teacher," one sneered, "we may have provoked you first, but forcing us to kneel and apologize in public, that's going too far." Another student's voice rang out, more vehement than the rest. "We're the prodigies the War God Academy has dedicated itself to cultivating, the very backbone of Beihuang's future. What you did tonight was no accident. It was a deliberate attempt to humiliate our generation and disgrace the Academy's name. Surely, teacher, you owe us an apology as well." Murmurs swelled among the onlookers, and then a clear, commanding voice cut through the clamor. Heads turned to find a young man stepping forward, violet spiritual energy rippling around him in faint, ethereal waves. His posture was erect, his features sharply handsome, and an unmistakable arrogance gleamed in his eyes as he faced Ye Cheng. There was no hint of fear, only cool disdain. High above in Yuanzhang City's rooftops and hidden alcoves, Moon Realm masters, each a powerhouse in their own right, held their breath, instantly alert to the newcomer's presence. Ye Cheng regarded him with mild amusement, lifting an eyebrow. In a quiet voice that nonetheless carried across the courtyard, he said, "Yang Hongli, one of the Moon Realm's most celebrated talents." Granted, He may not rival the absolute prodigies, but in the Moon Realm, he's already a standout, someone declared. But how dare he defy his own mentor? Another master muttered, bewildered. A ripple of confusion passed through the gathered Moon Realm dignitaries until a well-informed observer's eyes lit up as he turned to Yang Hongli with a knowing grin. Ah, it all makes sense now, he said. Yang Hongli wasn't just any talent. He was personally selected by Qi Wenxuan at Kangshan to join the God of War Academy. Qi Wenxuan even bestowed upon him the Bronze Order of the God of War, guaranteeing his spot in the Academy's entrance trials. He paused for effect, lowering his voice. And have you heard the rumor? Another genius Qi Wenxuan recruited from the wilderness was later killed by a hegemon. That hegemon, according to whispers, was also remarkably young and, like this mentor, shrouded in mystery. At these revelations, the crowd fell silent. Even Ye Cheng's eyes gleamed with a sudden clarity as he took in the new information. So that's it, Ye Cheng murmured under his breath, but his words were lost beneath the hum of excited voices around him. Yang Hongli caught the rumor on the breeze and let a cruel smile curl over his lips. He just learned that Ye Cheng's backer was none other than instructor Qi Wenxuan, a name that carried weight all over the Ares Academy. Chai wasn't just another teacher. He hailed from the legendary Tian Hall clan, one of the Academy's 3 great houses. Even more impressive, the clan's founding ancestor sat as one of Tiangong Hall's 5 vice masters, wielding power few could challenge. In Yang's mind, the rules were clear. He had served under Qi's guidance for years and enjoyed all the privileges that status conferred. Ye Cheng, by contrast, was a newcomer, an untested recruit fresh from the untamed wilds with no pedigree to speak of. There was no way someone like him would dare cross a Tiangong Hall protege. Now, with the whole courtyard watching, Yang decided it was the perfect moment to teach this upstart a lesson. A little public humiliation would not only avenge his beloved mentor, but also remind everyone exactly who held the real power at the Ares Academy. Ye Cheng had more in mind than just showing off. Scoring favor with Master Qi Wenxuan would guarantee he had the tutor's backing once he matriculated at the God of War Academy. At that moment, Yang Hongli swept his gaze across the assembled students. With dramatic flourish, he rose to his feet and addressed his classmates and the onlookers from the God of War Academy in a tone of righteous indignation. Nearly everyone looked on admiringly, save for the handful of girls who were already smitten with Ye Cheng. Flush with pride, Yang Hongli prepared to press his advantage and force a public apology from his target. But before he could speak, a cool voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "You're dismissed." Yang Hongli froze, his mouth hanging open. "What?" he stammered, unable to believe his ears. Ye Cheng remained perfectly calm. "I said, you're dismissed. Leave." A flush of rage painted Yang Hongli's face crimson. He tried to retort, but Ye Cheng continued without raising his voice. "The God of War Academy needs no smooth-talking schemers. If you'd never shown up, that would have been fine. But now that you have, you won't be stepping foot inside those gates." Shock and fury warred in Yang Hongli's expression. "You! How dare you?" He finally managed to sputter. "You're only an instructor. You don't have the authority to expel a formal student like me." Yang Hongli's voice trembled with indignation. He'd planned this moment to humiliate Ye Cheng and burnish his own reputation. Even if Gu hadn't handed him the opening, the worst Yang imagined was a bruising fight, a mere bump in the road that would only cement his status as a fearsome peer among this year's prodigies and earn him Qi Wenxuan's favor. After all, Qi Wenxuan would see to it that today's slight was avenged once Ye Cheng arrived at Ares Academy. It was a guaranteed victory. What could possibly go wrong? He never expected Gu to carry out the threat so swiftly. Yang Hongli didn't believe Gu even possessed the power to expel him, yet Gu's serene words had left him unnerved. The decree hung in the air before Yang could muster a proper rebuttal. Gritting his teeth, he opened his mouth to protest, but it was too late. Ye Cheng was already moving. Swish! Ye Cheng had no interest in wasting any more words on Yang Hongli. He simply lifted his hand, and a beam of condensed spiritual energy shot out, striking Yang Hongli squarely in the lower abdomen dantian. In an instant, the vital energy center shattered. Yang Hongli's triumphant shout cut off mid-phrase, as if someone had strangled an old duck. His shoulders slumped, and he sank to his knees like a deflated balloon. All the years of cultivation gone in a single strike, his Dantian ruined, his spiritual power evaporated. He was nothing more than an ordinary man now, utterly powerless. You actually destroyed my cultivation. Yang Hongli stammered, eyes wide with shock and fury, glaring at Ye Cheng as if wishing to tear him apart. But Ye Cheng gave him only a cold glance. He turned away and strode toward the waiting Tianzhou. Behind him, the students of the War God Academy, pale and trembling, scrambled aboard, still reeling from the display of power. Within moments, the ship's engines roared to life and lifted them off toward the academy, leaving Yang Hongli broken and helpless behind them. Chapter 488. A heavy silence settled over the skyboat. Xianxia and the other 100 or so prodigies sat motionless, their eyes fixed on Ye Cheng with equal parts shock and fear. Xianxia, in particular, found herself reeling. She'd long known Ye Cheng to be ruthless and decisive, but she had never imagined he'd be bold enough to defy Yang Hongli, a fellow disciple of the God of War Academy. In one swift stroke, he'd revoked Yang Hongli's status as a formal student. Was he not worried the Academy's leaders would be furious and come after him? True, Yang Hongli was a minor figure, but the real power lay behind him in Qi Wenxuan, a presence none could afford to underestimate. It was only a matter of time before news of Yang Hongli's expulsion reached her ears, and when it did, she would surely demand retribution. Was Ye Cheng truly without fear? Inside the skyboat's enclosed cabin, Ye Cheng sat cross-legged, eyes closed in quiet meditation. His face was the very picture of serenity, completely unconcerned by the murmurs and anxious glances of prodigies like Xianxia. It may have looked as if Ye Cheng acted on impulse when he shattered Yang Hongli's legs, but every detail of that strike was meticulously planned. His aim was simple, to establish and broadcast his authority within the God of War Academy. Maiming Yang Hongli was only the opening move. Ye Cheng deliberately spared his life out of respect for Lord Yuan Sheng of the domain, who had personally recruited Yang as an academy instructor. Yang Hongli was no common thug. He'd passed the rigorous trials to earn his place among the academy's ranks. To kill him outright would have insulted both patron and protege. By contrast, leaving him alive but crippled promised a far crueler fate, a living reminder of the price of defiance. But Ye Cheng's calculus went deeper. With Yang Hongli still clutching the God of War order, he alone could carry the secret summons to Qi Wenxuan, and thus draw Qi out from his hiding place. The brutal display at Yuanzhang Square wasn't meant merely to shock onlookers. It was a signal fire, flaring across the domain to guide Qi Wenxuan's path. Standing amid the stunned crowds, Ye Cheng felt the full weight of his accomplishment. The God of War Academy was more than a school of arms, it was a crucible of power, and today its fires had been stoked in his favor. Yuan Sheng's opening declaration still rang in everyone's ears. Our mission here at the God of War Academy is to forge the strongest generation of prodigies in the northern wilderness continent. In most sects and academies, titles like mentor or elder carry immense weight, disciples kowtow, and respect is rarely questioned. Not so at the God of War Academy. Here strength is sovereign, and innate talent reigns supreme. That stark meritocracy is precisely why Yang Hongli had the audacity to challenge Ye Cheng in the first place, and why Ye Cheng felt compelled to seize control of the situation. Ye Cheng wasn't a troublemaker by nature. He'd come to the academy with two goals, to reunite with Xiao Yiren and Yi Ruoshui, and to hone his own abilities. Yet even as a newly appointed mentor, he understood that a title meant little unless backed by undeniable prestige. If he hoped to train with confidence and safeguard those he cared about, he needed to assert his authority, and fast. All eyes fell on Qi Wenxuan, who now eagerly stepped forward, hoping to curry favor by volunteering as the first to face Ye Cheng's challenge. It was an opening the young mentor couldn't ignore. Establishing dominance here would send an unambiguous message. At the God of War Academy, respect is earned through power. With that, Ye Cheng lifted his chin and prepared to demonstrate precisely why talent and strength mattered above all else. Swish! The war god skyboat tore through space-time with blinding speed. As the Academy's premier cross-domain vessel, it could traverse the countless realms separating the Moon Realm from the northern wilderness continent in the blink of an eye. Tens of millions of miles collapsed into a single rod of light. Soon, Ye Cheng and his challengers would be face to face, and the true test of will and power would begin. A few days later, Ye Cheng arrived at last. Standing at the prow of the war god's skyboat, he gazed out in awe. Behind him, over 100 fellow prodigies, each one a rising star in their own right, crowded the deck, their eyes alive with excitement and reverence. Below them stretched an endless plain, a supercontinent spanning 100,000 miles. 9 great rivers snaked across its surface like roaring dragons, each current shimmering with raw, draconic power. Even from more than 10,000 feet above ground, the oppressive energy rising from that land pressed in on them, heavy and unmistakable. Despite the skyboat's reputation as a top-tier Saint Lord vessel, its usual breakneck speed faltered under this incredible aura. The pilots slowed their advance, as though paying homage to some ancient force. Whispers rippled through the assembled talents. "Is that the pressure of the Great Formation?" one of them murmured, voice trembling. Ye Cheng clenched his fists, determination sparking in his eyes. Whatever lay ahead within the walls of the War God Academy, he would face it head-on. Ye Cheng steadied himself on the deck of the War God's skyboat, every muscle tensing as an invisible force pressed in around them. If even this legendary vessel was straining under the weight of that power, he realized, the source had to be far beyond a mere Saint Lord level formation, perhaps approaching Domain Lord strength. No, that wasn't it. He drew in a slow breath, astonishment flooding his features. The War God Academy truly deserved its title as the Northern Wilderness's supreme cultivation sanctuary. This overwhelming might wasn't conjured by any artificial array. It was the land itself, alive with power. This plane was an innate heaven and earth-born domain master-level formation. Such terrain was exceptionally rare, a gift of nature that amplified any man-made patterns laid upon it. By erecting a domain master-grade spirit-gathering array here, the Academy had effectively doubled its potency, equivalent to running 2 such arrays side by side. And the killing array they'd buried beneath the ground? Once triggered, it would unleash the destructive force of 2 domain master-level death arrays at the very same moment. Realization sharpened Ye Cheng's gaze. To trespass on this sacred ground was to gamble with annihilation. An error could doom the skyboat and everyone aboard. He had to alert the crew before the Academy's hidden traps awakened. Even now, Ye Cheng's eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, as if he could peer through miles of earth and stone, down to the hidden veins of this vast plain. There he sensed a latent surge of divine energy, potent, yet sealed away. Faint traces of array sigils danced around those buried ley lines, evidence of a masterwork formation patiently waiting to be awakened. If unleashed, this innate array won't stop at the Domain Master tier, Ye Cheng whispered to himself. It could thunder into Realm Master power, perhaps even beyond. From the broken remnants of the pattern, he knew the God of War Academy possessed the secret to trigger it, but only at great risk. That hidden activation method had been locked away for just such a desperate hour. When called upon, its release would strike the enemy with a shock no one could foresee. He drew a slow, steady breath to quell the excitement racing through him, then turned his gaze back to the Academy's sprawling buildings dotting the plains below. The moment to unleash this buried power might yet come, but not until the time was right. Ye Cheng stood on the outskirts of the vast plain, where 9 rivers wound across the land like living dragons. Stretching for over 100,000 miles, the plain was dotted with the colossal spires of the God of War Academy. From a distance, those towering pavilions and ramparts looked like a mountain range all their own, undulating, unbreakable, and bristling with martial power. Even before he drew near, the air vibrated with a golden sword's flash and the thunder of iron-shod hooves. A fierce, soaring fighting spirit blew across the plain, filling Ye Cheng's chest with awe and a deep, instinctive urge to clash blades. But what struck him most was the Academy's spiritual energy. It was richer, more abundant than anything he'd ever felt. Curious, Ye Cheng reached out with his inner senses and drew in a small portion of that qi. The moment it touched his spirit, he realized this was no ordinary aura. It carried with it a raw, unfiltered will to kill and to conquer. As he refined it, that deadly intent fused with his own cultivation, promising not only a massive leap in training speed, but also a subtle strengthening of his physical body. For Ye Cheng, this was the perfect crucible. Here, surrounded by dragons of water and spires of stone, he could finally forge himself into a true warrior. Even a Dao heart can be honed to a razor's edge, and bathed in this spiritual energy, rife with killing intent and the fervor of battle, it only grows more tenacious and fearsome. Ye Cheng breathed in the charged air, his eyes narrowing with appreciation. The God of War Academy really is something else, he murmured. No amount of grand formations could ever replicate this. He sighed softly, then spun to face the dozen or so students clustered behind him, still slack-jawed from witnessing the Academy's raw power, and flicked his wrist. "Shake it off, we're about to land." At once, Senior Gu. Though they'd once scorned Yang Hongli, these pupils feared Ye Cheng far more. Even Xianxia, usually so haughty, snapped to attention at his command. "Yes, Senior Gu," she called out. With a subtle tap of his will, Ye Cheng guided the war sky boat into its descent. As the vessel pierced the morning mists, every student, instructor, deacon, and their attendant retainers, scattered among the Academy's pavilions, towers, temples, and palaces, felt the shift in the air. One by one, they craned their necks skyward. "Is that the God of War skyboat?" someone whispered. "Only a month until the freshman tournament," another voice replied, tinged with awe. "And here it comes." "Is that the war god's sky vessel coming back?" someone exclaimed. "It must be the last one. They're probably unloading the weakest recruits," another scoffed. "Hold on. Did you see the instructor at the helm? He looks barely out of his teens." At first, most of the onlookers at God of War Academy paid little mind to this particular vessel, but the moment they spotted the youthful face of Ye Cheng at the bow, curiosity rippled through the crowd. Instructors here might not command the same reverence as they do in other sects, yet their power was undeniable. Every academy instructor boasted cultivation spans that measured in millennia, thousands, even tens of thousands of years, so spotting one so young was unheard of. Whispers turned to stunned silence as they tried to reconcile this boy's age with the austere might they'd always associated with an instructor. Just then, a soft rush of air swept through the assembly. Deep within the heart of Ares Academy's enigmatic palace complex, a chill voice rang out, silencing the entire audience. "Ye Cheng, at last you've arrived. I've been waiting for you for a very long time. Come forward." At that icy roar, every monk and beast in the hall turned in astonishment. Far above the courtyard, the clouds suddenly parted. From the palace spire descended a titanic spectral palm, its edges crackling with otherworldly energy. It smashed through the mist and pinned itself before the Ares skyboat on which Ye Cheng stood, then slammed him with earth-shaking force. Boom! Chapter 489, a colossal palm, formed of condensed spiritual power and inscribed with dark magic runes, tore through the air and bore down on Ye Cheng. The sheer ferocity of its approach drew every nearby academy monk and spirit beast to a halt. When they recognized the telltale runic patterns, shock rippled through the crowd. That fluctuation in spiritual energy, it's the trademark of the Sky Crocodile clan. Could someone from that clan really be attacking us? It is Qi Wenchuan, the Tiangong Hall instructor, just unleashed that strike. Whispers spread like wildfire. Qi Wenchuan was no ordinary cultivator. He hailed from the ancient Sky Crocodile clan, a god-tier lineage whose prestige surpassed even the royal and imperial clans. Across the endless ages, the Sky Crocodile clan had maintained its status at or beyond the saint level. Their current clan ancestor had ascended to the domain master realm of the saintly path, an existence whose power eclipsed that of most ancient god clans. All eyes turned back to Ye Cheng as the rune-etched palm hurtled toward him. In that moment, both wonder and dread settled over the battlefield. What fate awaited the young disciple standing in the path of the Sky Crocodile's might? Ye Cheng, like Qi Wenchuan, held dual membership in the God of War Academy and the Tiangong Hall, and he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a powerful realm lord from within the academy, a patron whose influence even made the three halls' guest elders tread lightly in his presence. Add Qi Wenchuan's own formidable strength to the equation, and his status in the academy was simply unassailable. Whispers rippled through the assembled monks and beastfolk. What could this young human tutor possibly have done to provoke Qi Wenchuan into unleashing a thunderous palm strike aimed squarely at crushing him? All eyes turned toward the war god's sky vessel, the Tianzhou, eager to see how Ye Cheng would weather the assault. Qi Wenchuan's attack, though not a secret killing technique, was driven by raw, unrestrained anger. Its speed and power rivaled a bolt of lightning. No ordinary, late Saint King would dare meet it head-on. To the onlookers, the only plausible outcome was that Ye Cheng would be forced to yield, if not suffer grievous injury. Yet, as Qi Wenchuan's roaring palm descended, Ye Cheng stood perfectly still and calmly pointed a single finger downward. Bang! A brilliant shaft of spiritual light erupted like a sword and struck the giant palm mid-air, shattering it to fragments in an instant. The explosion sent ripples surging through the void, rattling nearby monks and creatures, but no one dared look away from the impact point, their faces pale with shock. He actually stopped it? This young human master really has talent. Blocked? No wonder you had the nerve to challenge me, but don't think you'll walk away unscathed. From the hall where the palm had launched, a figure stormed out. Clad in a deep purple robe embroidered with a bronze tripod, a fierce black horn sprouted from his forehead. Qi Wenchuan, the Saint King of the Sky Crocodile God Clan and a registered master of the Tiangong Hall at the God of War Academy. He leveled a cold glare at Ye Cheng. You're fortunate. I can see you're strong. Qi Wenchuan's lips curled into a mocking smile. Kneel. Beg for mercy. Hand over all your wealth and apologize to me. Now. Qi Wenchuan's voice was cold and precise. I'm prepared to forgive your earlier transgressions and even allow you to stay at the God of War Academy as a mentor. But if you force my hand, you will be defeated, utterly. I will trample you into the dust and strip away every ounce of your so-called dignity. Ye Cheng stood firm, unblinking beneath Qi Wenchuan's glare. Qi's eyes brimmed with haughty confidence as he continued. Word has it that this so-called young mentor of humankind, Ye Cheng, was recruited from who knows where. All I know is that he sprang from the wilderness and not long ago slew one of our hostile geniuses. A ripple ran through the assembled students. Murmurs swelled until one well-informed pupil stepped forward, voice low but urgent. That genius had already received the Academy's Bronze God of War order, the very order you, Teacher Qi, conferred. Qi Wenchuan's expression darkened, but before he could retort, the student pressed on. I understand your anger, sir, but inciting a duel between instructors, or kin, is a flagrant breach of the Academy's code. We cannot allow this dispute to escalate inside our walls. Even if the highest authorities really wanted to stir things up, Qi Wenchuan wouldn't escape unscathed, no matter how many powerful backers he had, or even the Tiangong Hall's deputy master watching over him. And that's not all, the monk added, lowering his voice. I just heard a fresh rumor. He leaned closer and whispered about what had happened in Yuanjiang Square. Can you believe it? Teacher Ye Cheng was utterly ruthless. He destroyed Yang Hongli on the spot. A few instructors burst into applause. Good. It's about time someone put these arrogant juniors in their place. If they all thought they could lord it over their elders, we'd never see any respect around here. But not everyone was convinced. One senior teacher frowned. No matter how unruly Yang Hongli has been, he's still a student of the God of War Academy. For Ye Cheng to humiliate him so publicly, even with justification, the Academy will see it as excessive. Another chimed in, nodding in agreement. Exactly. Qi Wenchuan has always been bold, but now this. Teacher Gu has virtually cut off any chance of reconciliation. If the higher-ups decide to make an example, both of them could be in serious trouble. Ye Cheng's position was precarious. Had he merely beaten Yang Hongli instead of crippling him, Qi Wenchuan would have thought twice before retaliating. He'd have risked disciplinary action. But by maiming Yang, even if he'd been provoked, Ye Cheng had crossed the line. Now, any fresh attack from Qi Wenchuan could be justified as payback for a fallen brother. Even the senior masters of the Killing Dao Hall, Ye Cheng's own sect, couldn't step forward to defend him. The fault lay squarely with Ye Cheng's hot-headedness. "Looks like Master Gu is destined to take the loss," whispered the spectators, their voices a low chorus of certainty. And yet, a murmur of doubt rippled through the crowd. There was one way Ye Cheng could turn the tables, if he defeated Qi Wenchuan outright in this duel. A clear victory now would strip Qi Wenchuan of any excuse for future reprisals. Today's strike could be written off as a momentary lapse, but a second defeat would leave Qi Wenchuan and the college elders who sympathized with him no room to maneuver. Silence fell over the arena as Ye Cheng and Qi Wenchuan squared off. All eyes watched, waiting to see whether Ye Cheng's impulsive blow had doomed him, or whether he still had the skill and resolve to claim vindication with a single, decisive victory. However, the odds of pulling off anything against Qi Wenchuan were vanishingly small. His lineage, his background, and his natural talent all spoke for themselves. Then, with a thunderous boom, on the battlefield, Qi Wenchuan's voice rang out like ice. "Kneel and beg for mercy. Surrender every last coin in your possession, and I might show you mercy." He strode forward, looking down at Ye Cheng. The instant his foot hit the earth, a terrifying pressure exploded outward. Within a 10,000-foot radius, the ground writhed with dark runes that rose and intertwined until they formed a forbidden array, enveloping both Qi Wenchuan and Ye Cheng in its inescapable grip. Chapter 490. Dark energy roiled within the forbidden formation, coalescing into two colossal divine crocodiles, each 1,000 feet long. One of these fearsome beasts materialized behind Qi Wenchuan, its immense power fusing with his own and amplifying his divine might. The other crouched cross-legged atop Ye Cheng's head, fangs bared and talons digging in, its oppressive presence crushing his spiritual energy. "This is the double crocodile forbidden dragon formation," the elder announced, voice echoing through the courtyard. "It's recorded in the Sky Crocodile treasure techniques passed down by the Sky Crocodile clan." He swept his arm, and intricate lines of light sprang to life beneath their feet. "It's fiendishly difficult to set up," he continued, "but once activated, its power allows Qi Wenchuan to rival a perfect Saint King. Any opposing cultivator or beast, even those at perfect Saint King level, will be crushed under the projection of the Sky Crocodile. At best, they'll be reduced to an early Saint King. Some won't even reach that." A hush fell over the assembled disciples and war beasts of the God of War Academy. All eyes fixed on Qi Wenchuan with palpable reverence. Though his cultivation rank wasn't the highest among the Saint King tutors, his mastery of formations firmly placed him in the Academy's top 10. Ye Cheng's strength, when he had time to prepare, easily outstripped his true cultivation level on home ground. In a head-to-head duel within the same realm, he could face down the entire Ares Academy's masters single-handedly. Today's trap, however, was no last-minute whim on Qi Wenchuan's part. It had been meticulously laid for weeks, biding its time until Ye Cheng arrived, so it could spring shut in one crushing blow. "Still won't bow your head?" Qi Wenchuan's voice rang out, dripping with contempt. "The moment I strike, you'll have all the regret in the world." As he activated the formation, unshakable confidence radiated from him. He looked at Ye Cheng as an emperor might regard a lowly subject, more insect than man, ripe for extermination. This cold arrogance was no empty posturing. Long before he even left the Moon Realm, Qi Wenchuan had learned that Ye Cheng, the newly appointed mentor at Ares Academy, was the one who killed Man Gu. From that day on, every step he took, every plan he made, served only one purpose: to bring this duel to fruition and crush Ye Cheng utterly. Yet there was one thing Qi Wenchuan had failed to anticipate: Ye Cheng's unyielding boldness and the fearless resolve burning in his eyes. Knowing Qi Wenchuan's background, he finally dared to move against his chosen target, Yang Hongli. He'd held back until now out of respect for the Academy's strict rules, but discovering that Ye Cheng had already eliminated 2 of his picks shattered that caution. Anger flared where fear once reigned. "I've run out of patience," Qi Wenchuan said, his voice ice-cold. No sooner had the words fallen than a deafening roar tore through the air. Behind him, the spectral form of a sky crocodile burst to life, its colossal jaws gaping in a thunderous challenge. The raw force it exuded seemed capable of ripping apart the heavens. That shockwave alone was enough to unsettle the battlefield. Ordinary cultivators staggered, and even Saint Kings felt their minds reel. Unless one was already in the late Saint King realm or higher, this sonic assault would overwhelm their consciousness, leaving them dazed and unable to respond for precious seconds. For those at the pinnacle of power, even a few seconds, or an interruption lasting thousands, can decide life or death. Qi Wenchuan bellowed, stepping forward and swinging his massive hand. Surging spiritual energy flowed into the spectral sky crocodile behind him, driving it to pounce on Ye Cheng. At the same moment, a second sky crocodile projection, specially calibrated to suppress Ye Cheng's divine power, resonated with Qi Wenchuan's assault and thundered down from above. One beast lunged from the front, the other from overhead, trapping Ye Cheng in a crushing pincer attack. This strength, it can't be Saint Lord level, someone gasped. Instructor Qi Wenchuan is truly fearsome, another voice murmured. Once he completes that formation, his combat power will rank him among the Academy's top 10 instructors, perhaps even the top 5. The two sky crocodile projections snapped their jaws with unmistakable ferocity. All across the battlefield, cultivators and summoned beasts recoiled in terror. Only Ye Cheng stood firm, bracing himself for the onslaught, and then struck back with full force. He adopted his familiar pointing finger stance, but as his finger descended, the air around him roiled with sword chi. In an instant, thousands of shimmering blade wraiths shot into the void. Those countless sword beams wove together into a forest of razor-sharp shadows, slicing the sky and earth as one. Above him, the spectral dark sky crocodile, already wounded by Qi Wenchuan's projection, was rent to pieces by the storm of blades. Yet the sword chi pressed on, surging like a tsunami toward the second crocodile shade that Qi Wenchuan had just summoned. Bang! The two titanic forces collided in midair. Divine radiance exploded outward, bathing the heavens in blinding light and blotting out the sun. A cataclysmic shockwave roared across the plain, shredding the silence and sending every warrior and creature skittering for cover. Countless monks and creatures around the battlefield held their breath, their eyes fixed on the heart of the blinding divine light. Not daring to blink, they waited for the next moment. And then, with a choking gasp and a spray of blood, a lone figure was hurled from the center of the fray. His once powerful aura flickered weakly as he smashed through halls of divine iron and sacred stone. He finally came to a halt amid splintered pillars and rubble, his body slumped against the wreckage. His face was ashen, blood beading at the corners of his mouth, utterly spent. A stunned hush fell over the onlookers, broken only by whispered astonishment. The winner has been decided. The loser. It's Qi Wenchuan. The duel had erupted in a blaze of power and concluded in a heartbeat. Many watchers were still frozen in shock. By the time they recovered, Qi Wenchuan lay collapsed in the dust, too grievously wounded even to rise. His meridians and dantian were shattered, his consciousness slipping away in a merciless defeat. From the gathered crowd came a single, incredulous murmur. Who is this human mentor? Defeat Qi Wenchuan so easily? That's absurd. A stunned hush fell over the monks and beast tamers of the God of War Academy. Every eye was fixed on Ye Cheng, shock etched deep into their faces as his victorious image burned itself into their minds. Behind him, Xianxia and the other prodigies who had accompanied him to the academy gaped in speechless disbelief. Xianxia felt the sting most of all. She and her peers had been personally chosen by Qi Wenchuan to take the academy's trial, effectively making them his disciples. When Qi Wenchuan had moved to crush Ye Cheng, Xianxia had inwardly rejoiced, certain the newcomer would be humiliated. Instead, the unchallenged Qi Wenchuan lay defeated at Ye Cheng's feet. Ye Cheng is a living legend, someone whispered, a monster you do not provoke. As Ye Cheng strode confidently toward the distant cluster of buildings, the Killing Hall, one of the 3 inner sanctums where the Academy's masters reside, Xianxia and the others felt an overwhelming sense of powerlessness settle over them. Other instructors still nursed a pang of resentment and even a spark of rivalry, confident that, given a few thousand years, they could match the prowess of these grandmasters. But Ye Cheng? Even Xianxia dared not entertain the slightest disrespect in his presence. Feeling the weight of their awe, he allowed himself a faint, assured smile. Exactly the impression he had intended, and it had been perfectly achieved. Without another word, Ye Cheng led Xianxia and the other freshmen toward the God of War Acad, Amy's registration hall. A few courteous nods later, he handed them off to the academy instructor on duty. The instructor's eyes widened in modest surprise at seeing him, but Ye Cheng offered only a respectful bow before turning to leave. His next stop was the Killing Dao Hall, where he would finalize his own registration, both as its newest instructor and as a student. Just as he was about to step away, a melodious female voice called out from behind, "You must be our new Killing Dao Hall instructor, Brother Ye Cheng, right? Brother Dao, are you on your way to register? I'd be happy to help, but I only see the 2 dialogue lines here. Could you please paste the entire chapter or the full excerpt you'd like rewritten? That way I can produce a complete, polished English version with Ye Cheng as your protagonist." Chapter 491. An enchanting voice drifted through the courtyard just outside the registration office. All eyes turned as a striking female cultivator approached. Her delicate features were framed by long, dark hair, and her sparkling eyes seemed to promise endless warmth and sweetness. She wore a form-fitting crimson robe that accentuated her graceful curves. The instant she appeared, every onlooker felt a surge of vivid daydreams. But it wasn't just her looks that bewitched them, it was her voice. Soft and melodious, it carried an almost mystical allure. As soon as she spoke a single sentence, the entire registration hall fell under her spell. Cultivators, spirit beasts, merchants, everyone paused mid-task, hearts fluttering in unison. Even Xianxia and her classmates, boys and girls alike, stood frozen, their pupils dilated, utterly captivated. A few steps behind sat Ye Cheng, his expression calm but alert. Next to him, the academy instructor overseeing the registration office fared no better. The moment he laid eyes on the crimson-gowned beauty, he managed only a strained smile. With a subtle motion, he guided spiritual energy along his meridians, then summoned his will to weave a thin, invisible protective barrier between his eyebrows, just enough to steady his mind against the unexpected onslaught of charm. Even so, the moment the crimson-robed woman spoke, Ye Cheng felt the instructor from the God of War Academy behind him draw in several quicker breaths. He allowed himself a silent admission. This woman is astonishingly powerful. After all, anyone chosen to teach at the God of War Academy is no slouch. Each is a Saint King Realm master, practically unbeatable by peers. Yet here, with nothing more than a word and a single intent gaze, this cultivator had pinned down one of their own and nearly severed his soul, despite his full preparations. Her strength must far surpass even Qi Wenchuan's. She's precisely the sort of fearsome instructor who'd rank among the Academy's top 10 without relying on formations or other aids. Still, Ye Cheng felt no fear. His own power now rivals that of a typical domain master. He may not yet stand toe-to-toe with Ares Academy's deputy deans, figures like Lord Yuan Shengyu, but against almost anyone else, he is more than a match. Under the deputy deans sit the masters and vice-masters of the 3 halls, ranks Ye Cheng felt confident he could match. When the woman in flowing crimson approached him, he inclined his head slightly, his voice calm and his gaze steady. "You're too polite. May I ask your name?" At his question, the scarlet-robed beauty's flirtatious smile vanished. She studied him intently, the sparkle in her eyes dimming and replaced by keen interest. "Your abilities are extraordinary," she said. "It's no wonder you defeated Qi Wenchuan and earned the special Golden Order, securing the Academy's highest training privileges." She straightened, her tone formal now. "I am Hong Yu, registered instructor of the Hall of the Killing Dao. I salute you, Brother Dao." "Saint Lord Hong Yu?" Ye Cheng raised an eyebrow, recognition and respect lighting his eyes. Hong Yu's renown extended far beyond the borders of his own realm. Even Ye Cheng, who until recently had been carving out his path alone in some remote corner of the wilderness, had heard the stories. Hong Yu was celebrated as the foremost illusionist among the Saint Lords of the Northern Wilderness, Divine Continent's 13 realms, and standing here before him, Ye Cheng could see why. Hong Yu's command of illusion magic was nothing short of astonishing. His strength likely rivaled that of the 3 Saint Lords who served under him. Technically, he was still at the Saint Lord level, but he had already broken into the great Tao of Tao Sutra, entering its threshold with an ease that spoke to years of secret training. His Tao domain, however, was only just forming, far from the minor success stage that marked a truly mature domain. Ye Cheng pondered all this in silence as Hong Yu spoke. At the same moment, the instru, Tor manning the freshman registration desk, beside Hong Yu stared at Ye Cheng with wide-eyed disbelief. Rumors of Ye Cheng's duel with Qi Wenxuan at the academy gates had spread like wildfire, and now here he was in the flesh. They'd just learned that Ye Cheng, the holder of a rare gold commission, wasn't merely one of the academy's instructors, but also one of its greatest prodigies, entitled to the highest level of training. In the God of War Academy, there were hundreds of gold commission instructors, yet only 5 ever received the elite programs reserved for genuine geniuses. Each of those 5 was extraordinary, spoken of as a future master of the Third Hall, or even a candidate for vice dean. Could Ye Cheng truly be in their ranks? No wonder he'd had the confidence to cross Qi Wenxuan. The teachers at the registration office exchanged astonished glances. But talent alone didn't equal real power. Yes, Ye Cheng might achieve phenomenal success someday, but at this moment he'd made an enemy of Qi Wenxuan. And in the strict hierarchy of the Ares Academy, the only instructor more feared than Wenxuan was Hong Yu, a veteran whose influence was almost unrivaled. Even if Ye Cheng emerged victorious today, many would still question what his future held. After all, this world has never lacked in brilliant talent. Only those who mature and persevere all the way to the end can truly be called strong. The War God Academy sprawls across some 90,000 miles, more a fortified metropolis than a simple school. Within its boundaries lie 4 monumental complexes, the Killing Dao Hall, the Tiangong Hall, the Wandao Hall, and at the very heart, the War God Palace. Together, these 3 halls and 1 palace form an architectural marvel, an imperial forbidden city for this vast academy city. Positioned in a perfect triangular formation, the 3 halls stand sentinel around the War God Palace, each one closer to the academy's core than the last. Among them, the Killing Dao Hall is unmatched in its singularity. 108 individual palaces encircle a towering ancient spire, each structure hewn not from ordinary stone or timber, but from an unidentifiable divine iron. Neither the palaces nor the central tower share the familiar luster of other sacred buildings fashioned from various heavenly materials. Instead, they gleam with a cold, inscrutable strength, as if each piece of metal itself were alive with the promise and peril of the Killing Dao. Though many details remained unclear, one thing was certain. All of these arms are forged from Saint Lord-grade divine iron, blended with domain Lord-grade materials. The War God Academy is indeed wealthy and powerful. Its foundations are unparalleled. Ye Cheng inclined his head slightly, but he felt no real surprise. Ever since he'd learned that Yuan Sheng, a domain lord, might stand toe-to-toe with a realm lord, he'd formed his own estimate of the Academy's resources. The Killing Dao Hall's armory was impressive, but not beyond what he had expected. Paradoxically, his calm acceptance only made him seem more inscrutable and more formidable in the eyes of his guide, Hong Yu. Hong Yu's gaze flicked to the special golden order clutched in Ye Cheng's hand. He burned with curiosity about the young man's true identity and power, but as a senior tutor at the academy, he knew some questions were best left unasked. Restraining himself, he instead led Ye Cheng deeper into the labyrinthine halls, patiently explaining every rule, rank, and ritual that governed the War God Academy. Hong Yu looked at Ye Cheng and explained, "At our God of War Academy, every tutor must take on at least 1 disciple. You're also required to deliver a sermon at least once every 3 months. She paused, then added, "The benefits you receive as a tutor, your allowances, your resources, are directly tied to your disciples' talents, their cultivation level, and even how many students you have under your wing." Ye Cheng frowned. What about the students themselves? How do they gain entry to the top training grounds? Students, Hong Yu said, must complete a series of rigorous assessments and earn contribution points before they can enter the premier sanctums of the 3 halls, the Wandao Tiangong in the Wandao Hall, the Killing Dao Tower in the Killing Dao Hall, or the Tiangong Pavilion in the Tiangong Hall. Each visit costs points, and there's no shortcut around it. She smiled. Tutors, however, have it easier. Each of us can enter any holy cultivation hall once per year at no cost. Better yet, you can earn extra visits. If you take on over 100 disciples and keep their rankings within the top 10 of their class, you get an additional entry. It's a system designed to keep tutors fully invested in their students' progress. Ye Cheng absorbed the information thoughtfully. With a minimum requirement of only one disciple and a quarterly sermon, the demands on a tutor seemed light, until he realized how closely his own advancement hinged on his students' success. Encouraging them to excel would not just prove his worth, it would shape his entire future at the academy. Mentors are allowed into the sacred land of cultivation only 3 times, and each sojourn lasts 9 months. After those 3 visits, you must wait 3 years before you can enter again, unless you've made extraordinary contributions to the academy. 9 months may sound brief, but as Hongyu pointed out, the benefits you reap inside each sacred land easily surpass 100 years of ordinary cultivation in the outside world. Naturally, that prospect stirred Ye Cheng's interest. Hongyu simply nodded, unfazed by his reaction. "I'm not surprised," she said. "Every mentor here joined the God of War Academy for the same reason. If you want to secure a spot, you should start gathering spiritual treasures now. The rarer, the better. And be sure to broadcast your generosity. Let everyone know you reward your disciples well. That's the only way to attract truly outstanding students. Only then can we secure more opportunities to train in the Holy Land." Gather treasures to attract students? Hongyu, are you seriously asking me, their mentor, to cater to them with gifts? Hongyu's suggestion stopped Ye Cheng in his tracks. A moment later, realization dawned, and he laughed. Those college administrators really know how to play to our heartstrings. In most sects and schools, even the brightest disciples must show deference to their mentors and elders, and often flatter them to advance. At Ares Academy, the rules are turned on their head. Here, if an instructor wants better resources, be they magical relics, rare artifacts, or coveted positions, they must first lure talented students into their fold. The more gifted the disciples under a mentor's wing, the richer the rewards he receives. This unorthodox system was deliberately crafted by the Academy's High Council. By insisting that instructors compete for outstanding pupils, Ares Academy guarantees a constant influx of elite talent. All the mentors admitted under this rule are exceptional individuals with impressive backgrounds. While not every teacher can claim an ancient god pedigree like Qi Wenxuan's, their abilities and connections are of the same caliber. And because these masters invest their own treasures and expertise into their students, the Academy's collective achievements soar even higher. In short, Ares Academy's leadership deliberately aligned every mentor's fortunes with those of their disciples, ensuring that nurturing geniuses becomes the surest path to prestige and power. Compared to the masters, the Academy's leadership pays far more attention to the Xianxia recruits. It's easy to see why. Although the War God Academy's masters are undeniably powerful, most have already reached the limits of their potential. Their futures are, in a sense, capped. The newly admitted Xianxia, by contrast, still possess untested bounds. Yet the masters themselves stand to lose little. They may pour vast resources into honing these prodigies, but simply having a War God Academy student bear your name is a priceless endorsement, an unrivaled guarantee that no amount of money can buy. On top of that, mentors enjoy privileges like access to sanctified training grounds such as the Wandao Celestial Palace, opportunities wholly unavailable to outsiders, no matter their wealth. All of this, however, leaves Ye Cheng unmoved. Whether he stands as mentor or pupil, he has no interest in currying favor. "If anyone wishes to become my disciple," he said, "I won't refuse. If they refuse, I won't force them," Ye Cheng said with a faint smile, his calm assurance catching Hongyu off guard. He saw no need to elaborate. According to the Academy's rules, an instructor only needed a single disciple to meet the requirement. Xiao Yiren already occupied that spot, and Yi Roshi might join later, so there was no cause for concern. As for securing entry into the Cultivation Holy Land, that too posed no problem. Given his daughter's talent, she would easily rank among the top 10 in her class, guaranteeing her a chance to enter the Holy Land. The other spot could be secured by his own efforts without difficulty. What truly occupied Ye Cheng's mind, however, was the special quota increase tied to the 3 sacred cultivation realms. As Hongyu had explained, Each of these holy lands was governed by the master of one of the three halls. The Killing Dao Hall controlled the Killing God Tower. Training there dramatically honed one's Dao perception and could even elevate a cultivator to the brink of perfection in the Dao realm. Ye Cheng had another trump card tucked away, the sword tablet he'd unearthed in Yuanwu's mansion. Used together with his existing supreme treasure, it promised to accelerate his Dao perception transformations like never before. Yet, having only just broken through into the Dao realm, even two legendary artifacts wouldn't spark an immediate cascade of breakthroughs. For now, they would serve as backups, ready when he truly needed them. Before him lay the famed Tiangong Pavilion inside the Tiangong Hall, a vast repository of pill recipes, formation schematics, and instrument manuals painstakingly compiled over centuries by the myriad tribes and sects of the God of War Academy. To any cultivator devoted to the Tao of alchemy, the Tao of formations, or the Tao of instruments, this was nothing less than a treasure trove. Scholars said that 3 months spent studying these ancestral collections could yield insights equivalent to decades of solitary research in the outside world, a claim that hardly seemed exaggerated. Even Ye Cheng felt his pulse quicken at the thought of delving into those scrolls. Yet, as enticing as the pavilion was, he couldn't forget the price he'd just exacted on Qi Wenchuan of the Tiangong Hall. Pressing his advantage now might invite swift reprisal from the hall's formidable elders. With a reluctant sigh, he stowed both supreme treasures back into his spatial pouch. There would be time enough to explore Tiangong Pavilion's secrets, once his grasp on the Dao realm was steadier and his strength undisputed. Ye Cheng shook his head. If he marched straight into Tiangong Hall now and begged for entry to the pavilion, he'd only end up looking ridiculous. He wasn't about to let himself be brushed off so easily. First, he decided he would take his time learning how the God of War Academy operated, and then figure out his next move. Before long, his attention settled on the Wandao Palace, territory of the Wandao Hall. Rumor had it the palace was built from Dao Lord-grade divine materials, each floor inlaid with a heavenly time pearl. These pearls bent the very flow of time. Whether one was meditating on the Dao or honing martial techniques, 100 days' practice inside the palace would pass in the blink of a single day outside. It was known as a 100-fold acceleration sanctuary, undeniably one of the 3 greatest cultivation shrines in existence. Ye Cheng was no stranger to such temporal marvels. In his early years in Nanchuan Shenzhou, he had claimed the holy furnace from the heavenly Dao treasure and discovered it granted precisely the same acceleration effect. With that in mind, the Wandao Palace suddenly seemed less like unattainable legend and more like an opportunity. Ye Cheng knew the power of the holy furnace well. It was the pinnacle of cultivation aids in the Saint realm, capable of strengthening practitioners up to the Saint King level, but no further. In theory, even domain lords and realm lords who visited the Wandao Palace could draw some benefit from it. Now that he'd just broken through his own realm, this was exactly the time he needed to stabilize and deepen his cultivation. There could be no better place than the Wandao Palace's sanctum. If you want to enter the Wandao Palace now, I'm afraid it's impossible, Hongyu said, shaking her head with regret when he asked about gaining access. Everything the Wandao Palace currently offers, its resources, its privileges, even the right to use the holy furnace, has already been promised to Mo Jinyi's new protege. She looked apologetic. That young man, like you, is a special gold rank instructor. His talents and background are extraordinary, and Palace Master Mo has taken him under his wing. I'm sorry, Brother Ye Cheng, but until that arrangement changes, there's simply no room for anyone else. Palace Master Mo devoted the entire 6-month training period in the Wandao Palace before the freshman competition to Ye Cheng, the new instructor. What's more, those 6 months, equivalent to 2 full entries into any sacred ground, were charged to Palace Master Mo's own usage quota. They won't count against Ye Cheng's personal limit at all. I'm so envious, Hongyu admitted, her voice tinged with awe. Even someone as exceptionally talented and well-regarded as she must spend her own usage slots to enter the Wandao Palace, or its equivalents, the Killing Dao Tower and the Tiangong Pavilion. Once those slots are used up, she'd have to perform extraordinary deeds for the God of War Academy and accrue outstanding merits just to return. But Ye Cheng? He didn't have to do any of that. He merely joined the Wandao Palace and received Master Mo Jinyi's personal instruction. It's astonishing. But don't be too jealous of him, Hong Yu added with a small smile. You hold a special golden order as an instructor yourself. You know, the senior who brought you into the Academy of the War God must have arranged something special for you, right? Well, Ye Cheng scratched the back of his neck, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. The truth was, he hadn't the slightest idea how things ran at the Academy, or whether Lord Yuan Sheng had pulled strings on his behalf. Then again, it didn't really matter. With his own strength, he could earn any favor he required. What intrigued him far more was the mysterious junior whom the Wandao Temple's leader clearly prized above all others. Hong Yu shrugged, an amused expression flickering across her face. That Taoist is impossible to pin down. Since she arrived, she's shut herself away in Wandao Hall. Even the instructors and students there have only seen her a handful of times. No one really knows where she came from, or what she's capable of. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. But if Hall Master Mo Jinyi holds her in such high esteem, you can bet her future achievements will be nothing short of extraordinary. Many of the senior instructors are already planning how to make allies with her once they return from retreat for the freshman tournament. Hong Yu paused, a mischievous smile playing on her lips as she regarded Ye Cheng. Word is, this new fellow Taoist isn't just a prodigy. She's said to be stunningly beautiful, peerless in appearance. On her very first day at the academy, she even confessed that she had a crush on someone. Ever since, male instructors have been clamoring for her favor. Qi Wenchuan, the same instructor she once defeated, is among those vying for her attention. Ye Cheng raised an eyebrow. Oh, and who's won her heart? Leaning in, Hong Yu lowered her voice. They say her name is Yi Roshui. Ye Cheng pressed a hand to his forehead, half in disbelief, half in surprise. He'd long suspected that Yi Roshui might enroll at the God of War Academy, but he never imagined he'd learn of her presence so unexpectedly. It seems this so-called Big Lowly has an even stronger reputation at the Academy than I do, even after I defeated Qi Wenchuan. A pleased smile tugged at my lips, but I couldn't help wondering about my daughter's whereabouts. I shifted the conversation. By the way, I said, do you know if there's a freshman named Gu Yiren here? Hong Yu's eyes widened. Gu Yiren? Even though I'm new to the academy, I've definitely heard that name. She's something of a legend. She glanced at me again, clearly intrigued. After a moment, she shrugged. She made her name in Beihuang long before enrolling here. I figured you'd already be aware of her achievements. Hong Yu's gaze flicked to Ye Cheng as she spoke, her voice low but insistent. This student, Gu Yiren, is hailed as one of the most promising contenders in the upcoming freshman tournament, and she's already drawn the special attention of our hall's senior masters. She paused for a moment, studying his reaction. Although she hasn't formally chosen a mentor yet, several deputy hallmasters have stepped forward on her behalf, even securing her a place in the Killing Dao Tower so she can begin her training early. Ye Cheng's eyes widened in surprise. Misreading his silence for interest in recruiting her, Hong Yu offered a gentle warning. Brother Dao, if you intend to bring her into your own school, be prepared for a fight. She leaned in, her tone earnest. Gu Yiren's talent is blinding, and her reputation is unmatched. Even though she's expressed her desire to join our hall, masters from the other two halls are already scrambling to win her favor, draping her with rare treasures and coveted resources. And of course, our own masters will stop at nothing to secure her loyalty. In short, the competition for her allegiance will be fierce. Although Ye Cheng's power was unquestionable, he'd even managed to silence Qi Wenchuan and secure a reputation at the War God Academy almost overnight. Most of the school's prodigies, Hong Yu included, still preferred Qi Wenchuan as a mentor. After all, the practical advice a mentor offers in daily training could just as easily be gleaned from the quarterly sermons given by visiting masters. And for those who excelled, it wasn't difficult to petition guest elders, deputy hallmasters, or even full hallmasters, figures more powerful than their own mentors, for guidance. What truly mattered to these young cultivators was a mentor's wealth, connections, and the concrete support he could provide on their path. In that regard, Chai Wenxuan, backed by the ancient gods, outshone Ye Cheng by a wide margin. Still, Hongyu was keen to befriend Ye Cheng. After all, anyone entrusted with a special golden order must possess remarkable talent and an exceptionally bright future. Ms. Yu's power set her apart from the other mentors. She needn't tiptoe around Chai Wenxuan's pride, so she leaned in to give Ye Cheng a friendly nudge. I know you're not one for pomp and ceremony, but you should still pick a few students. She paused, letting her words sink in. After the freshman showcase, every new student will choose the mentor they want to study under. And in turn, each mentor competes to recruit the best and the most freshmen. If you end up with no students, or only a handful of mediocre ones, it'll be humiliating. Especially since Chai Wenxuan won't stay down for long after today's setback. He's already confident he'll make his mark in the freshman trials. Ye Cheng raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Ms. Yu continued, her voice taking on a subtly warning edge. In fact, Chai Wenxuan has been busy. During his travels through the 13 realms, he handpicked several outstanding talents and bestowed on them the Silver God of War order, meaning they skip the entrance exam altogether and enter the academy directly. She gave him a knowing look. Those prodigies are no lightweights. Their strength and potential are all top tier. If you don't move soon, you'll be left empty-handed. Ye Cheng's jaw tightened as he realized the stakes. Recruitment wasn't just about numbers. It was about prestige, pride, and proving who truly had the skill to guide the next generation of warriors. He nodded curtly. Understood. I'll make my selections. With that, he turned away, already planning how to secure the finest talents before Chai Wenxuan's protégés could claim them. They may not yet match Gu Yiren's prowess, Hongyu warned, but placing among the top 30 in the freshman contest shouldn't be beyond you. She fixed Ye Cheng with a serious look. You'd do well to enlist a prodigy of equal caliber. Without one, you'll only open yourself to ridicule. Ye Cheng inclined his head in thanks. I'm grateful for your concern. Rest assured, I know my own limits. Despite his courteous tone, Hongyu sensed his reserve and shook her head gently. She had offered all the advice she could. If he chose to disregard it, there was little more she could do. Then I hope you've truly made your preparations, she said, her voice softening. With that settled, Hongyu led Ye Cheng through the vast corridors of the Killing Dao Hall, pointing out its 108 chambers and explaining their layouts. At the end of their tour, she presented him with a hall assignment order, his ticket to claim one of the empty halls as his own. Once the official business was done, Hongyu offered a brief nod and withdrew. Ye Cheng watched her depart, then turned and slipped into seclusion without hesitation. Yi Ruoxue remained holed up in the 10,000 Dao Palace, and Xiao Yiren in the Killing Dao Tower. They wouldn't emerge until the freshman tournament began. Ye Cheng didn't waste time hunting them down. Instead, he withdrew into seclusion, dedicating himself to consolidating his cultivation. A month passed in the blink of an eye, and at last the day of the freshman competition arrived. Ye Cheng stood at the academy gates, anticipation sparking in his eyes. It's time to head out and see what the new prodigies of War God Academy can do, he declared, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 493, the Ares Academy, vast enough to rival a small nation, buzzed with activity day after day. But today, the excitement reached a fever pitch, especially in the sprawling central plaza, 1,000,000 feet in radius, where thousands of figures had gathered, monks, warriors, and mystical beasts alike. Not only did Ares' own students and instructors fill the space, but dignitaries and powerful cultivators from across the northern wilderness had also arrived to witness this grand occasion. Today was the freshman competition, undoubtedly one of the Academy's most prestigious events. Over the past months, senior masters and officials had journeyed through all 13 realms of the northern wilderness, recruiting the finest prodigies to enroll at Ares. Now those chosen would face off, each determined to prove themselves the greatest among great talents. The goal? To identify the true pillars who would one day ensure prosperity for every race in the northern wilderness. With such high stakes, the air thrummed with anticipation. Look, someone whispered, pointing toward the entrance as the ceremony was about to begin. Look, there he is, the Black Sky Saint. A wave of whispers rolled through the assembly. 10 years ago, he withdrew into seclusion to break through to the Domain Lord realm, and vowed not to emerge until he succeeded. Who would have guessed he'd break his vow today, just to attend this ceremony? "Don't be ridiculous," another voice retorted. "His son was just accepted as a freshman at War God Academy, and everyone's predicting he'll finish in the top 100. Of course the Black Sky Saint would come out for his child's big moment." "Heavens, what's that over there?" a newcomer exclaimed. "Is that the legendary Red Phoenix? They say that when it reaches full maturity, it can rival a Saint Lord, and it's pulling a carriage?" All eyes lifted skyward. 4 colossal Saint Lord tier beasts, each scaled in fiery crimson, hauled an opulent chariot whose long, dark red banner streamed behind like a comet's tail. The beasts came to a graceful stop, and from beneath the chariot's ornate canopy stepped a figure in flowing crimson robes, regal and graceful as an empress, yet radiating the authority of a warlord. "That's Domain Lord Zhu Ye," someone whispered in awe. Only a handful of Domain Lords remain across the 13 realms of the Northern Wilderness, and today many of them have come to witness this ceremony. "Look over there. Domain Lord Qing Yun, isn't it? 1, 2, 3? Even excluding those aligned with the War God Academy, more than a dozen Domain Lords have arrived just to watch." The foundation of the War God Academy is astonishing. A mere freshman contest has drawn nearly a third of all transcendent beings in the Northern Wilderness. All around the Grand Square, cultivators and mystical beasts whispered in awe. New students of the War God Academy filed in one after another, their eyes fixed on the towering figures whose auras pulsed with power. Among the freshmen walked Ye Cheng, his dark hair stirring in the breeze. Every step he took brought him closer to the legends gathered here. The presence of so many Domain Lords, so many transcendent beings, filled him with both wonder and fierce excitement. If he could make a name for himself today, Ye Cheng knew the Academy's top masters would notice. He would be granted precious resources, and his reputation would spread across all 13 realms. "This is my moment," he thought, determination blazing in his eyes. "Don't miss it." A chorus of eager voices echoed across the arena. "I have to earn a top spot in the freshman trials." Clusters of wide-eyed novices surged forward, their excitement barely contained. Yet here and there, a few remained calmly detached, their expressions unreadable. One of them was the little girl Xiao Yiren. Since entering the square, she had been scanning the rows of seats, desperately searching for her father's place among the academy tutors, so far with no luck. A shadow of disappointment began to form on her young fac. Just then, the restless chatter was cut short by a series of thunderous bangs. All around the plaza, massive gates swung open in unison. From the thresholds poured potent currents of energy, majestic spiritual auras that coiled skyward like dragons breaking free. In an instant, the entire arena fell deathly silent. Even the most boisterous spectators froze, awed by the overwhelming display of power and careful not to speak a word that might be taken as disrespect to the War God Academy. Even the most esteemed Domain Lords couldn't help but stare as 5 squads filed through the towering gates. Nearly 1,000 cultivators stood before them, each one a Saint King, their spiritual energy thick and potent, their life force as deep and inexorable as the ocean. Such terrifying vitality and rock-solid foundations meant that even the weakest among them could easily attain true Saint King perfection in this era. Given but a sliver of opportunity, any of them might shatter the barrier to the Tao realm. In generations past, even the mightiest Domain Lords might command only half a dozen, or at most a dozen, warriors of such caliber. And yet here, at the God of War Academy, stood almost 1,000 instructors at the Saint King level. Among these elite masters, several were already teetering on the edge of the Tao realm, poised to break through by virtue of their own talent and accumulated prowess. Indeed, the God of War Academy lives up to its reputation as the supreme cultivation sanctuary of the Northern Wilderness, murmured a domain master, his voice tinged with awe. On the sprawling Academy Plaza, students clustered in tight groups, their gazes fixed on the 3 hall instructors as they strode toward the elevated stage. Each young cultivator's eyes burned with anticipation. The stronger the master, the greater the guidance and resources available to their disciples. Sensing the eager stares below, the instructors exchanged knowing smiles. They had invested heavily in this recruitment ceremony, but the Academy's generous rewards would more than compensate their efforts, provided they secured enough promising disciples. Yet even in this charged atmosphere, rivalry simmered. The Tiangong Hall instructor, glancing sideways at his counterpart from Wandao Hall, narrowed his eyes. "Wandao Hall," he said coldly, "you claimed a new mentor would join us today, a fellow Taoist named Yi Ruoshui. Where is she?" "Why hasn't she shown up yet?" one mentor muttered, glancing around the competition hall. "Perhaps she's too ashamed of her own weakness to face us," another sneered. Since Yi Ruoshui arrived at the God of War Academy, her breathtaking beauty and unrivaled talent have been the campus's hottest topic. But fame doesn't guarantee friends. Far from it. 6 months ago, Mo Jinyi stunned everyone by granting Yi Ruoshui exclusive use of the Wandao Palace, forbidding all others from entering even during her retreat. This safeguard was meant to protect her training, but for many instructors it felt like a personal slight. The second mentor, resentful and ambitious, had long coveted time in the Wandao Palace for his own secluded cultivation. He planned to strengthen himself there, then venture into the secret realm in search of treasures before the freshman trials began. Yi Ruoshui's unexpected privilege had blown that plan to pieces. Today's competition, he decided, would be his chance to put her in her place. Ye Cheng's scheme unraveled the moment Yi Ruoshui failed to appear at the arena for the freshman competition. Anger flared in his eyes as he leveled his spear point at Wandao Palace and laughed harshly. His outburst gave voice to several other instructors who'd long resented Yi Ruoshui's favored status and had bristled at Wandao Palace's inactivity over the past 6 months. In an instant, they all joined in, ridiculing both Yi Ruoshui and the reputation of Wandao Palace itself. But the very instructors who fired off these barbs were in for a surprise. Inside Wandao Palace, none of the senior teachers showed the slightest irritation. Instead, their expressions were amused, knowing smiles playing on their lips. Outsiders could never have guessed why. Although Yi Ruoshui had not yet emerged from her secluded retreat, a powerful, otherworldly aura was already radiating from the palace's highest tower, an aura that unmistakably heralded her arrival at the imperial cultivation level. And in that moment, the mockery aimed at Yi Ruoshui fell silent under the weight of what Wandao Palace truly commanded. 6 months in seclusion, with Wandao Palace's 100-fold cultivation acceleration, amounted to little more than a few decades of ordinary practice. Yet in that time, Yi Ruoshui had soared to the imperial realm, a feat made possible by her supreme immortal talent. Impressed by her rapid rise, the God of War Academy appointed her as an instructor, granting her its highest-tier teaching privileges and bestowing upon her a special golden rank badge. The elders and senior masters of Wandao Palace were entirely won over and raised no objections. As for those who had once derided Wandao Palace and Yi Ruoshui, there was no need for refutation. Let them mock now. When immortal sister Yi emerges from retreat, their own regret will speak louder than any rebuttal. A Wandao Hall instructor looked over with a teasing grin in the direction of Tiangong Hall. "Tell me, Tiangong Hall, when did you find spare time to mock us?" That offhand remark hit home. The teachers in Tiangong Hall went pale all at once. One of them managed to choke out, "Has your master, Qi Wenxuan, fully recovered from his injuries?" "Your comrade's injury isn't even healed yet, and here you are, meddling in Wandao Hall's affairs." Tiangong Hall couldn't be more heartless. "You." The Tiangong Hall instructors, who had been deriding Yi Ruoshui just moments before, stiffened under the glare of Wandao Hall's master. Their jeers died on their lips, replaced by flushed faces and embarrassed glances. Just a month ago, a newcomer, Ye Cheng, arrived at the God of War Academy and felled Qi Wenxuan with a single, decisive strike. That victory vaulted Ye Cheng into instant fame, earning him the admiration of Hongyu and all the Academy's top instructors, while leaving Qi Wenxuan and Tiangong Hall deeply humiliated. Since then, Ye Cheng has remained secluded in Qilingdao Hall, honing his skills in silence. But Tiangong Hall's masters never forgot their shame. They've been waiting for any chance to reclaim their honor. They never expected Wandao Hall to snatch the spotlight from under them. "What, am I wrong?" the Wandao instructor taunted, laughter ringing through the chamber. Everyone in Tiangong Hall knew they'd overstepped and had no grounds for argument, but that didn't stop their anger. One by one, the instructors turned scowls toward the killing Dao Hall, specifically at the newcomer who'd just taken his seat. Ye Cheng was about to begin his search for Xiaoyiren, and it felt like a bolt from the blue that every pair of eyes in the hall was burning into him. Under their murderous gazes, Ye Cheng sighed inwardly but refused to be distracted. His only focus was to scan the tens of thousands of challengers below for any sign of Xiaoyiren. Just then, a voice he recognized rang out, and every instructor from the third hall snapped to attention. "What Master Dao said is mistaken," Qi Wenchuan announced, striding forward from the far side of the courtyard. His breath came easy, his aura even stronger than when he dueled Ye Cheng a month ago. "My injuries have fully healed. There's no need for you to worry on my account." Whispers spread like wildfire through the sect. He had actually broken into the middle stage of the Saint King realm. Who would have believed that just a month ago, Ye Cheng had beaten him to the brink of death? And yet now, his wounds were completely healed, and his strength had only grown sharper. Chapter 494. Just 1 month ago, Qi Wenchuan had thrown himself into battle to defend Yang Hongli and Mangu, determined to force Ye Cheng to bow and confess his guilt. Instead, Ye Cheng countered with astonishing speed and power, completely overwhelming him. Qi Wenchuan was crushed beneath that onslaught, his body broken, his life hanging by a thread. Were it not for the legendary resilience of the Sky Crocodile clan's bloodline, a physique far beyond any ordinary sage, he would have been permanently crippled. Even so, any supreme sage who suffered injuries so severe would normally require months, if not years, to recover, no matter how many divine treasures he possessed. Yet when Qi Wenchuan reappeared this morning, every wound had vanished without a trace. Not only was he fully healed, but his cultivation had leapt forward, elevating him to the mid-stage of sage. Such a miraculous transformation left everyone reeling in disbelief. "My ancestor was furious when he learned of my defeat," Qi Wenchuan confessed, bowing his head. "He said I had brought shame to our clan and our teachings. Since then, I've reflected on my failure day and night, vowing never to repeat such disgrace. When I sincerely admitted my fault, my ancestor pardoned me and even granted me another sky crocodile blood pill to speed my recovery." Qi Wenchuan felt dozens of eyes on him. He offered a slight, modest smile and spoke slowly, his words coated in faux humility but laced with unmistakable arrogance. He made sure to remind everyone that only a domain master of the Sky Crocodile clan could refine such a rare pill, one unique to their lineage. An apology? Genuine remorse? Hardly. Many of the instructors buzzed amongst themselves, calling it nothing more than a display of ego. Still, there was no denying the effect. As Qi Wenchuan's injuries visibly healed before their eyes, the gathered prodigies in the square broke into murmurs of astonishment. Their admiration and envy shone in their gazes, feeding his pride with every passing second. Yet beneath that self-satisfied smile burned a darker feeling. Qi Wenchuan's hatred for Ye Cheng had only grown stronger. Qi Wenchuan's gaze turned icily toward Ye Cheng, the tutor from the killing hall standing just a short distance away. He clenched his jaw but didn't rush in. Before the freshman competition, he'd already done his homework on Ye Cheng, a self-styled little overlord of the wilderness, wielder of the Saint King Dao, blessed with a Saint King's mansion and multiple royal inheritances. Out there, such power earned him respect. Here at Ares Academy, however, it meant nothing. Today's event was Qi Wenchuan's chance to wipe away his past embarrassment. He could hardly wait for the competition to conclude. Then he'd accept a disciple of his own and restore his reputation. Ye Cheng, though, paid Qi Wenchuan no mind. His attention was fixed entirely on locating Xiaoyiren. He extended his spiritual sense in a sweeping arc and finally sensed the faint echo of her presence. Father's spiritual sense? In the center of the vast training square, surrounded by tens of thousands of talented newcomers, Xiaoyiren paused her own search. As soon as she felt the familiar pulse of Ye Cheng's spirit, her eyes shone with delight. She looked up just in time to meet Ye Cheng's steady gaze. A bright smile spread across the little girl's face as she lifted her hand to wave happily at her father. "Dad!" She was about to call, when a booming voice echoed across the training square. Freshman trials are about to begin. Competitors, prepare to enter the arena. From above, a middle-aged man in flowing black robes descended, his demeanor both dignified and unyielding. This was a domain lord, a guest elder of the God of War Academy, and today he served as the official overseer of the freshman competition. With a deliberate motion of his hand, an immense wave of spatial energy rippled outward, enveloping everyone on the square. Before Xiaoyiren and the other gifted students could even register what was happening, the force struck them. A sudden rush of vertigo washed over their bodies, and their surroundings blurred into streaks of light and shadow. Then, silence. When they opened their eyes again, they found themselves standing beneath a soaring canopy of ancient trees. Towering trunks stretched overhead, their branches interwoven so densely that only mottled sunlight pierced the undergrowth. Wild vines curled around ferns as exotic bird calls echoed from unseen perches. Back on the empty square, a colossal luminescent screen flickered to life. It displayed live projections of Xiaoyiren and the others scattered among the primeval woodland. The domain lord's voice resonated one final time. This trial ground is known as the Tianzang Holy Forest. Competitors, your assessment begins now. Some of you may already have heard its name. Your mission, to survive in the legendary Tianzang Holy Forest. For every full day you remain alive, you'll earn 100 points. For each monster you slay, you'll receive between 1 and 100 points, depending on its strength. The contest lasts 5 days. When those days are up, your total points will decide the winners and your final rankings. Middle Saint Tai Hao, dressed in flowing black robes, addressed the array of fresh-faced disciples before him. At the very mention of Tianzang Holy Forest, the cultivators and onlookers ringed around the plaza went pale. The Tianzang Holy Forest was infamous across Beihuang Shenzhou. Within its depths roamed ferocious beasts of legendary power, and its terrain bristled with deadly natural hazards and arcane wards. Ordinary emperors dared not venture in lightly. Only cultivators who had reached the saint realm could traverse it with any confidence. Quasi-saints, by contrast, often found themselves struggling merely to hold their ground. Among the gathered novices, Ye Cheng's pulse quickened. No matter how many stories he'd heard, nothing had prepared him for the reality of what lay beyond those forest gates. Yet here he stood, ready to test his mettle against the perils of Tianzang. The challenge had begun. Among the recruits, the highest cultivation rank was merely emperor level, and saint-emperor practitioners were exceptionally rare. Even though these youths were the brightest talents of the northern wilderness divine continent, venturing into the perilous trials of the freshman assessment still stretched their abilities to the limit. But deep within the Tianzang Holy Forest, there was no hint of doubt or hesitation. Xiaoyiren, Ye Cheng, and their fellow new genius recruits, each of whom had overcome countless trials to earn a place at the God of War Academy, stood with unflinching resolve. Not even the most marginal qualifiers, like Xianxia, showed fear. Instead, their eyes blazed with fighting spirit. Observing them, the middle-aged man in black robes offered a slight, approving nod. Just as the assembled geniuses readied themselves to begin the hunt, the robed man raised his hand once more. Instantly, the colossal curtain of light hovering over the plaza split into 36 smaller screens, each mapping to one of the outer regions of the Tianzang Holy Forest. In each sector of the clearing, 3 figures stood at attention. Clad in the dark robes of God of War Academy students, these young prodigies, both male and female, radiated vitality. Their gazes were sharp, their auras fierce. It was impossible to mistake them for ordinary students. These 36 teams of Academy elites had enrolled years before Ye Cheng and his classmates. They were the descendants of legendary sects and great martial families, the Academy's revered old students. A middle-aged man in flowing black robes strode to the front. He tapped the lectern and scanned the gathered novices, 108 new recruits whose hearts were already pounding with anticipation. "Listen well," he said, voice carrying over the hushed crowd. "Over the next 5 days, you will face the monsters and dangers lurking in the Holy Forest. But that isn't all. We will also dispatch our 108 upperclassmen into the forest to hunt you down." A murmur rippled through the ranks. "If one of those seniors catches you and defeats you in combat," the instructor continued, a mischievous glint in his eye, they'll seize half the points you've worked so hard to earn. So don't take your opponents lightly, juniors. At last, Ye Cheng and the other new students exchanged uneasy glances. They had suspected the beasts in the holy forest would be dangerous, but this new twist, this sudden threat from their own academy's veterans, was far more unsettling. As long as you stay hidden and tread carefully, lasting 5 days isn't impossible. But when you throw in the academy's veterans, graduates of the God of War Academy who've been honing their skills for years, the game changes entirely. I suspect you all anticipated that challenge. With a languid wave of his black-robed sleeve, the middle-aged man summoned a colossal projection screen before the young geniuses grouped under Guyiren's banner. On it flickered the images of Ye Cheng, Qi Wenxuan, and the 3 hall instructors, each standing stiffly on the main square's observation platform. "Don't lose heart so quickly, rookies," the man continued. "Regulations stipulate that before the grand tournament begins, you must first witness the apprenticeship ceremony your instructors have prepared." He swept his gaze toward the mentor's row, where the assembled tutors sprang to their feet. Smiling broadly, they held aloft carefully wrapped parcels, the gifts they had chosen to beckon promising students into their ranks. "If there's a prodigy willing to study under me, I'll give him a private lecture once a month, and a bottle of top-grade holy elixir to speed his realm breakthroughs. I specialize in formations. Any genius who follows me will be protected by a Holy King-level array, my gift to you or even your entire family." One by one, the tutors offered tempting perks. Their generous promises banished the newcomer's earlier dread, breathing fresh excitement into the crowd around Ye Cheng. When it came to Tiangong Hall's turn, Qi Wenxuan sprang to his feet first. His eyes glittered with impatience as he shot a challenging look at Ye Cheng. Then, with a casual flick of his wrist, swish, a pillar of radiant light soared into the sky, illuminating the entire square. In an instant, the countless cultivators and onlookers who had assembled for the ceremony leapt to their feet, their gazes fixed on the wondrous treasures Qi Wenxuan had revealed. Shock and awe shone in every pair of eyes. Chapter 495. A brilliant beam of light shot up from the viewing platform, signaling the appearance of treasures from the sects, each more dazzling than the last. Whispered exclamations rippled through the crowd. "Look, 9-level Divine Fire True Gold. It's nearly 9 feet long. With this, you could forge Saint Lord-grade spirit weapons for at least 3 entire sects. And that must be the Gengjin Star Bead beside it, a top-tier Saint Lord treasure. They say embedding it in a spiritual tool instantly boosts its lethality by over 30%. You'd be hard-pressed to put a price on something like that. Isn't that the famed stars-gathering Saint Pill in that vial, glowing like a fragment of stardust? 1 pill can save a Saint Lord from a century's worth of grueling training, or so the legends claim." All around the square, cultivators and creatures who had come to witness the ceremony stared in awe. Even veteran Saint Lords found themselves blinking in disbelief at Qi Wenxuan's display. These were priceless relics. By rights, only those possessing immense power or wealth could ever hope to acquire them. Yet here they were, laid out for all to see. A murmur spread through the crowd. Just because Qi Wenxuan was unveiling these treasures didn't mean he intended to hand them out to every disciple who came along. He could barely keep enough for himself. Yet Qi Wenxuan didn't flinch. Such generosity was astonishing and terrifying. "This is the privilege of the descendants of the ancient gods," someone whispered. "Who could ever match his wealth or his legacy? What does a single victory or defeat matter to a man like him?" "Exactly," another agreed. "He might lose 10 battles or 100, but with the backing of the Sky Crocodile clan's ancestors, his prospects will always tower over ours. How can any of us compare?" The instructors exchanged sighs and glanced at Qi Wenxuan with newfound reverence. Sensing their awe, Qi Wenxuan's lips curved into a proud smile. He swept his arm toward the array of artifacts spread out before him. "These," he announced with theatrical flourish, "are the gifts I intend for my disciples." A hush fell over the hall. Then, with a lofty nod, he continued, "Any genius who pledges loyalty to me will receive at least 1 star-gathering pill and 1 Genjin star pearl." With those words, the gathered cultivators realized they were witnessing not just a display of power, but the promise of boundless opportunity, if only they dared to step forward. Xianxia let his gaze sweep slowly across the assembly of instructors, a faint, calculated smile curling his lips. "If your talent truly merits it," he announced, "even rare treasures like the 9 separation divine fire true gold will flow generously from this saint's hands." He paused, then added with an air of camaraderie, "Besides, I'm always eager to make new friends." His eyes locked onto the masters of the 3 halls, one by one. "But be warned, anyone who dares oppose me will find that I repay insult with insult, injury with injury. On the other hand, those who stand with me, who draw a clear line between themselves and my adversaries, will have no stronger ally. As my friend, if you ever lack cultivation resources or need protection from your own sex beyond these walls, simply call on me. It will be my honor to assist." The moment his words fell, a tense silence settled over the viewing platform. The instructors exchanged guarded glances. Xianxia's earlier display of priceless relics had already showcased his power, but this bold offer of reward and retribution made one thing unmistakably clear. His real challenge was aimed squarely at Ye Cheng. Xianxia's proposal and the grand gesture he'd just made were undeniably tempting. Yet, although the onlookers were intrigued, none of the hall instructors on the viewing platform were willing to act on it. Only the instructors from Tiangong Hall had openly sided with him. Those from Wandao Hall and the War God Hall remained politely neutral. Xianxia's family background is formidable, one Wandao Hall instructor whispered to his colleague. But this newcomer, Ye Cheng, shows exceptional promise. "Winning a golden order is no small achievement," the colleague agreed. "Even if Ye Cheng doesn't quite measure up to teacher Yu Shui, his future prospects look every bit as bright as Xianxia's, perhaps even more so. I wouldn't be surprised if in time he rivals the Tian Crocodile clan's venerable ancestor." Faced with such high praise for Ye Cheng, none of the instructors dared offend Xianxia outright, but neither could they dismiss Ye Cheng without good reason. Xianxia realized this outcome ran counter to his intentions. Pressuring them further would only alienate potential allies and undermine his own plans. Sensing the stalemate, he took a measured step back, concealing his frustration behind a polite smile. He spun his spear so that its tip was pointed squarely at Ye Cheng, a wry smile curling on his lips. "Making friends isn't a one-and-done affair," he drawled. "So take your time. But tell me, Ye Cheng, aren't you the only one here who hasn't unveiled the gifts you've prepared for the juniors?" He raised an eyebrow, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You've been quite the celebrity lately, Ye Cheng. Everyone's been buzzing about you. I'm sure whatever you brought won't disappoint, right?" At his words, all eyes swung toward Ye Cheng. A murmur of curiosity rippled through the crowd, especially among the instructors who knew all too well about the rivalry between him and Xianxia. Some watched him with surprise, others with a flicker of sympathy. Hongyu, standing nearby, couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. She remembered Ye Cheng's insistence from a month ago that he wouldn't be supplying any gifts. But by now, he must have grasped the Academy's unspoken rules, and understood just how crucial the freshman mentorships would be once the newcomers' trials concluded. Despite Hongyu's earlier warning, Ye Cheng had made scant effort to prepare a gift package. He knew that no matter how thoughtfully he presented himself, his offerings would look meager next to Xianxia's, and might even reinforce Qi's appeal, drawing more freshmen into his circle. Hongyu sighed inwardly. Mentally, she'd already declared, "In this round, Mentor Gu doesn't stand a chance." But on the projection screen, Ye Cheng merely smiled. "If any of you have been waiting for me to show off grand prizes, I'm sorry to disappoint." He spoke with calm detachment, scanning the dozen or so fresh faces assembled before him. He leaned casually against the lectern, every bit the unhurried master. "I came to the God of War Academy simply to strengthen my own skills and to teach anyone who's eager to learn. If you truly wish to become my disciple, I won't turn you away, and if I have the time, I'll gladly offer you personal guidance." He straightened, his tone still easygoing. "But if you'd rather follow someone else, that's your choice, and I won't force you. As for gifts or special treatment, I've made no preparations. The decision is entirely yours, young talents. I don't care. Ye Cheng's words rang out coolly, freezing the entire viewing platform in an instant. Qi Wenchuan, caught off guard, blinked in astonishment. He had never expected such blunt defiance. Then, as if savoring a private joke, Qi Wenchuan burst into scornful laughter and looked down at Ye Cheng with contemptuous delight. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful, Mr. Gu, he sneered, clapping his hands in exaggerated applause. Such courage, such conviction. Every slow clap dripped with sarcasm, making it painfully clear that Qi Wenchuan saw Ye Cheng's dismissal as nothing more than arrogance. But to everyone's surprise, no one rushed to defend Ye Cheng. Along the edge of the platform, Hong Yu and the other masters of the Killing Dao Hall exchanged uneasy glances. The university's various halls depended on each other's reputations. And if Ye Cheng walked away from the freshman trials with nothing to show, it wouldn't just be his personal disgrace. It would cast a long shadow over the entire Killing Dao Hall. Hong Yu had warned him countless times to prepare thoroughly. Now, faced with Ye Cheng's outright refusal to show concern, Hong Yu's knitted brow revealed equal parts confusion and frustration. What on earth was his student planning to achieve with such reckless daring? Master Hong Yu drew a steadying breath and stepped directly in front of Ye Cheng. Though he tried to rein in his anger, any onlooker could hear the tension in his words. Brother Ye Cheng, your actions today were a bit excessive. Before the dispute could escalate, another senior master of Sha Dao Hall interposed himself. Now, Master Hong Yu, let's not be too hard on Brother Ye Cheng. He's always been composed. Perhaps his methods are simply unfamiliar to you. We're all comrades of the same hall. We should be looking out for one another. Several other masters, though privately uneasy with Ye Cheng's daring approach, nodded in agreement. With the grand competition looming, they had no desire to bicker among themselves. One of them even stepped forward with a reassuring smile. Master Hong Yu, rest easy. I'll gladly accept a few more disciples this year and assign one especially to Brother Ye Cheng. That way, he won't be left empty-handed, and the other two halls won't get any excuse to ridicule us. Ye Cheng offered a gracious bow and a gentle smile. Fellow Taoists, thank you for your support. Please, have no concerns. My preparations are complete. Since I made my promise, I've seen to every detail. At the competition, you can rely on me fully. I will not allow Sha Dao Hall to suffer even a shred of disgrace in this grand contest, Ye Cheng proclaimed, his voice steady with unshakable confidence. Hong Yu and the others exchanged uneasy glances, but moved by Ye Cheng's resolve, they swallowed their doubts and gave a reluctant nod. As they turned to leave, one of the mentors, who had earlier offered to secure a prodigy for him, leaned forward and whispered, "If you'd rather not go it alone, just say the word. I can assign a promising student to your hall." Ye Cheng met the offer with a gracious smile and a wave of his hand. "Thank you for your support. Rest assured, I have every confidence in my own arrangements." With that, he strolled back to his seat, exuding an easy assurance that caught the attention of every onlooker. Though the stir at Sha Dao Hall seemed small, it did not go unnoticed by the mentors of the other two halls in the viewing pavilion. "Did you hear what he said?" murmured one tutor from the 10,000 Dao Hall. Even without offering conditions or rewards, he believes prodigies will still flock to him. Another leaned closer, nodding thoughtfully. "Well, perhaps it's not so far-fetched. Didn't Ye Cheng once escort a whole group of prodigies back from the Moon Realm and the Wilderness Realm?" In the Wandao Hall, an undercurrent of murmurs had already begun. "Maybe there's something to it," one of the disciples whispered. The former prodigy, bound by fate, might yet defect to his side. Fate? Already set? Ha! On the courtyard beyond, Qi Wenchuan and his companions from Tiangong Hall broke into mocking laughter, all of them casting hateful glances at Ye Cheng. Even if that master-disciple bond was sealed long before anyone entered the academy, what difference does it make? Qi Wenchuan's sneer was ice-cold. Next to our saintly sect's vast resources, those so-called preparations vanish like mist at dawn, completely insignificant. With the Taiku God clan backing him unreservedly, and his rivals unwilling to offer even token support, he regarded the contest as already won. Chapter 496. Qi Wenchuan's confidence was unshakable, but not unfounded. The moment Ye Cheng announced his terms, the other instructors stationed on the observation platform relayed them in full to the newly admitted prodigies gathered in Tianzang's sacred forest. The response was immediate and unanimous. A handful of the female students, undeniably impressed by Ye Cheng's striking good looks, allowed themselves a moment of fawning admiration. But it was only a fleeting fancy. Almost as quickly as it bloomed, their infatuation died away, replaced by stern professionalism. One by one, these young geniuses, each having already conquered the grueling trials of the God of War Academy to claim official student status, crossed Ye Cheng's name off their list of prospective instructors. They had proven themselves among the Northern Wilderness's finest talents, each forging their path through relentless discipline and raw ability. To them, idle charm and lofty demands meant nothing without the true foundation of strength. In the hush that followed, the only sound was the wind rustling through the ancient trees, a quiet reminder that in this sacred place, power spoke louder than promises. And Ye Cheng, for all his daring terms, found himself no closer to winning a single disciple. Choosing between Qi Wenchuan and Ye Cheng was never in doubt. Only little Xiaoyiren, perched on the viewing platform, stared at the projection screen showing her father below. Her big eyes sparkled with excitement. Down in the square, Ye Cheng caught his daughter's unwavering gaze through the screen. A gentle smile curved his lips, and he lifted his brows in a silent greeting. At once, Xiaoyiren's excitement bubbled over. She balled her tiny fist and tapped it twice against her chest. It was their secret signal, her way of telling him she was ready to go to battle on his behalf and defend him against anyone who dared disrespect him. No one else noticed the little gesture, but Ye Cheng did, and he returned her knowing look. He was about to call up a warning to take it easy when dong! A clear Taoist bell rang out across the square. In the heart of the Tianzang Holy Forest, every personal projection screen in front of the newcomers went dark. Only the giant monitors on the square remained, broadcasting the action in real time to the assembled spectators. A black-robed elder stepped forward, his voice grave and commanding. "Let the first-year competition officially begin." At that signal, tens of thousands of prodigies erupted into motion. One after another, they activated their escape techniques, leaving glittering, rainbow-like trails as they shot toward the forest's depths. Among them was Ye Cheng, his expression calm but resolute. Behind the freshmen, 36 teams of senior students assembled, ready to give chase. Although the upperclassmen would start a full day later, their superior strength meant that once they closed the distance, the newcomers would stand no chance. On this critical first day, every freshman's only hope lay in racing as far and as fast as they could into the labyrinthine heart of the Tianzang Holy Forest. During the march to the competition grounds, the newcomer ranks quickly dissolved into chaos. Rather than traveling in peace, many fresh-faced students seized the opportunity to pick off rivals, hoping to banish the weaker and secure an early advantage. Xiaoyiren was among the most aggressive. Striding forward with fierce determination, she scanned the milling crowd for a suitable target. Yet despite her hostile posture, no one dared confront her. Whispers rippled through the ranks. "That's Xiaoyiren, the one-woman storm." Though she had kept a low profile since arriving at Ares Academy, her record spoke for itself. In just 10 days, she had completed the Academy's grueling entrance trials, an accomplishment matching and in some ways surpassing those who'd won automatic exemption and proudly bore the Silver Ares medal. To put her feat in perspective, nearly 1,000 prodigies had entered on exem, passion alone. Tens of thousands more had slogged through the standard assessment. In all that crowded field, only Xiaoyiren had finished in under 2 weeks. No wonder both the seasoned instructors of the Killing Dao Hall and her fellow freshmen quietly agreed. This young warrior carried a real chance of winning the entire competition. However, that didn't stop challengers from picking on Ye Cheng. One young man stepped forward, sneering as he shouted, "So you're Ye Cheng? Don't slip away. Face me first. I want to see what kind of qualifications a mere human brat has to claim he can win this contest." Before Ye Cheng could reply, a second figure barreled in from the side. Cloaked in blood red, the newcomer was slender yet exuded menace. His vertical pupils gleamed a fiery red gold, and the monstrous aura coiling around him marked him as one of the ancient creatures rather than a mere mortal. With every stride, his evil spirit surged like a tidal wave. Boom! Ye Cheng merely raised an eyebrow and held his ground, but the three geniuses flanking him weren't so fortunate. The shockwave blasted them off their feet, sending them tumbling dozens of meters back before they could even catch themselves. "Look," someone gasped. "It's him, the young master of the Blood Centipede clan, the Heavenly Blood Golden Centipede." Though the Blood Centipede clan wasn't counted among the Tai-Gu god clans, it nonetheless held an almost untouchable prestige among the Tai-Gu saint clans of the northern wilderness, feared even more than the legendary mountain-shifting demon ape lineage of the Moon Realm. In every generation, the mountain-moving demon ape lineage can produce only one Saint Lord. By contrast, the Blood Centipede clan has consistently produced multiple Saint Lords each era, and today boasts more than 10 ancestors who have reached Saint Lord perfection. Now, with the great world dawning and spiritual energy swelling to unprecedented heights, many are predicting that the Blood Centipede clan will ascend as the next Taiku god clan. Among all its prodigies, none is more talked about than Ye Cheng, the clan's singular young master. Where even those 10-plus perfection-level ancestors still require the great world's aid to hope for a breakthrough into the Domain Lord realm, Ye Cheng's gift needs no such intervention. Born with the legendary Heavenly Blood Golden Centipede bloodline, an inheritance the clan claims surfaces only once in 10 epochs spanning tens of millions of years, he stands alone in transcending every boundary the Blood Centipede clan has ever known. Ye Cheng had single-handedly broken through to the Domain Lord realm and even forged a relic of the ancient god clan purely by his own talent. That extraordinary achievement was precisely why he'd become one of the handful of Xianxia granted an automatic exemption from this year's entrance test at the God of War Academy. They say the moment teacher Qi Wenchuan laid eyes on him, he made up his mind, handed Ye Cheng a silver God of War order, and declared him test-exempt on the spot. At the mention of that legendary order, every astonished face in the hall lit up with awe. Nearby, Xianxia leaned forward, surprise evident in her eyes. "So you're the one Qi Wenchuan chose?" someone ventured. Ye Cheng inclined his head. Then, turning to Xianxia, he remarked in a cool, challenging tone, "I hear you're confident you can win this contest. Let's see if you're truly worthy of that claim." A ripple of cold laughter answered him. The man known as the Skyblood Golden Centipede licked his lips, his gaze flashing with predatory hunger. "If you're not, you do well to step aside," he warned. Before anyone could react, he struck. His body blurred into a streak of crimson light, and in the next instant, he materialized in front of Xianxia, sending her skidding backward with a single, brutal palm strike. Boom! A spectral centipede, forged from golden energy, materialized in midair. Its sheer force, equivalent to 10,000 kilograms, slammed into Xianxia's chest. The concussive shockwave rippled through the square, leaving every genius competitor and countless spectators, human and beast alike, gasping in stunned silence. That kind of power, even an Emperor Realm Master would struggle to withstand it, someone whispered, eyes wide. And yet it was unleashed by Ye Cheng, a junior who's only just perfected his Heavenly Emperor cultivation. "Exactly," another voice replied. "He may have reached the Heavenly Emperor pinnacle, but using such lethal force so effortlessly is nothing short of terrifying. As young master of the Blood Centipede clan, Ye Cheng truly lives up to his reputation. The legendary Heavenly Blood Golden Centipede artifact is called a once-in-a-million-years evil for good reason." Murmurs of awe spread through the crowd. Meanwhile, the instructors from the various halls couldn't conceal their envy as they glanced at Grandmaster Qi Wenchuan. It was a stroke of rare fortune to discover a genius like Ye Cheng, and even rarer to secure him as one's disciple. Blessed by this layer of fate, combined with Qi Wenchuan's vast wealth, no one could hope to pry the Heavenly Blood Golden Centipede out of his hands. "Fellow Taoists," he called out, feigning humility, "please spare your attention on me. Instead, watch the contest unfolding between the youngsters." Qi Wenchuan's pride shone in his eyes, though he forced a modest tone as he spun on his heel to face Ye Cheng. With a teasing smirk, he asked, "Brother Ye Cheng, What do you make of this young prodigy and his bloodski golden centipede? Surely a genius like that wouldn't tempt you, right? At Qi Wenchuan's barely concealed sarcasm, the instructors of Tiangong Hall couldn't help but laugh in unison. You mean this so-called heavenly blood golden centipede? Ye Cheng's voice was calm, almost amused. He let a faint smile play at the corners of his mouth, then enunciated each word deliberately. Compared to my friend Gu Yiren, it isn't even an ant. A murmur of outrage ran through the Tiangong Hall. Instructors gathered around the projection screen. Arrogant, one growled. Preposterous, another snapped. Qi Wenchuan's eyes flicked over them as their faces flushed with anger. He raised a hand to still their protests. Quiet, he said, his tone light but commanding. Taoist Ye Cheng is just hot under the collar, no need to take him too seriously. He offered Ye Cheng a mocking bow. Let's cut him some slack. We all know how bruised egos can cloud one's judgment. With that, Qi Wenchuan turned back to the screen, eager to watch Gu Yiren's anticipated defeat. But the instant he looked, the shadow screen flickered, and there was Gu Yiren, moving with deadly purpose. Having gauged the origin and power of the heavenly blood golden centipede, he wasted no time in striking back. Xiao Yiren drew in a steady breath and unleashed the 3 innate divine fires coursing through her veins. In an instant, they kindled into a brilliant tri-colored gauntlet that locked over her lotus-white forearms. Bolstered by those sacred flames, her strength surged to a level no mere quasi-saint could withstand. From across the field, the Blood Centipede clan's young master advanced, his palm crackling with power, the fearsome, heavenly blood golden centipede attack. Undaunted, Xiao Yiren raised her arm to meet it head-on. Then, with a thunderous crack, the collision shook the plaza. Under the horrified stares of the assembled Tianjiao and the silent monks and beasts crowding the outer square, the centipede-shaped energy blast splintered instantly against Xiao Yiren's radiant fist. The recoil was devastating. The young master was hurled backward like a rag doll, careening through the ancient forest at the edge of the clearing. Trees exploded in showers of splinters and dust before halting his flight. When the haze of smoke finally drifted away, the onlookers stood stunned into silence. None could deny that they had just witnessed a power unrivaled in this age. All the prodigies could see was the giant golden centipede ripped open by Xiao Yiren's blast so that its true form was exposed. Bloodied and battered, it lay unconscious at the bottom of the deep pit. Chapter 497. This can't be real. The heavenly blood golden centipede didn't even last one strike from Ye Cheng. It was forced back into its true form and knocked out on the spot. Preposterous. Absolutely preposterous. That was the heavenly blood golden centipede, an extraterrestrial bloodworm that only surfaces once every 10 epochs. It's worthy of domain master status. How could it be torn apart so effortlessly, so completely? For a stunned moment, the grand square fell deathly silent. Then, like a tidal wave, a chorus of shocked voices erupted. Spectators rubbed their eyes, convinced they must be dreaming. None were more flabbergasted than Qi Wenchuan. Only an instant ago, he'd been brandishing his prowess and taunting Ye Cheng, and now reality had dealt him a harsh rebuke. He stared at the sprawled form of the golden centipede, its segmented body writhing as it struggled for breath. In his hand, the Ares Academy medallion flared to life, transforming into a shimmering teleportation aura that began to yank him back toward the academy. Qi Wenchuan ground his teeth, fury burning in his chest. He longed to rip the heavenly blood golden centipede apart with his bare hands. Useless. Absolutely useless. This so-called alien blood mist, a once-in-a-million monster, yet it can't even fell one lone human? Pathetic, he seethed inwardly. At that moment, all eyes in the arena turned to the projection screen, where Ye Cheng's silhouette stood proudly. The mentor's gazes shone with an almost tangible heat, as if they could set the battlefield ablaze with their excitement. A low murmur rippled through them. A peerless monster. Truly unmatched. The heavenly blood golden centipede had fallen so swiftly and ignominiously only because it had underestimated its opponent. But its defeat also showcased Ye Cheng's exceptional talent and power. Even the greatest prodigies among the human race would have struggled to claim such a clean victory against a creature of that caliber. We need a plan. Prepare everything we can, and do our utmost to recruit this prodigy to our school. Though no one spoke aloud or exchanged looks, each mentor in the hall came to exactly the same conclusion. A few even rose from their seats and slipped off the stage, intent on gathering rare treasures they could later present as gifts. After the freshmen's competition, when the newcomers choose their mentors, these offerings might tip the balance in their favor and win over Xiao Yiren. Qi Wenchuan noticed the sudden empty seats and frowned in surprise. The masters who'd departed were no ordinary teachers. Their lineages rivaled his own. Their boldness broke him free from the simmering anger at his students' recent defeat and refocused his attention on the girl's ongoing performance. As he watched Xiao Yiren display her astonishing talent, Qi Wenxuan felt himself moved. Her humanity mattered little, her skill was undeniable. In the end, he reminded himself he was here to train extraordinary disciples, not to anoint heirs. Ye Cheng had merely used Xiao Yiren as a pawn to claim the Academy's highest honors for himself, treating her like nothing more than a tool. As he stood at the edge of the plaza, Qi Wenchuan watched Xiao Yiren with a calculating gleam in his eyes, already measuring how he might profit from her astonishing display. They were all gathered in the great square of Tianzang Holy Forest, countless prospective students, spectators, and instructors from the three halls. None of them had noticed the quiet strategies Xiao Yiren employed when she faced the heavenly blood golden centipede. Even the contenders who shared the stage with her had no inkling of the subtle tactics or of how deeply the mentors were watching her. And yet, her power was undeniable. With one earth-shaking punch, she crushed the centipede's defenses and sent the monstrous creature crashing to the ground. In that instant, she became the unquestioned favorite to win the entire championship. The murmurs rippled through the crowd. Other prodigies, some already adorned with the silver god of war order and exempted from the entrance examination, could only stare in stunned awe. Whenever anyone sensed Xiao Yiren's cold gaze sweeping over them, they involuntarily shivered and drew back, too intimidated even to meet her eyes. Several of Qi Wenchuan's chosen prodigies activated their body techniques and darted away, vanishing in moments. Xiao Yiren watched them go, momentarily frustrated. "How did they get away so fast?" she muttered, exasperated. But her disappointment faded almost as quickly as it had come. She hadn't been able to chase down every genius Qi Wenchuan handpicked. True. But she'd already achieved the most important victory. She'd defeated the sky-blood golden centipede, Qi Wenchuan's most powerful disciple and the one who bore the deepest grudge against her father. That triumph alone would have wounded Qi Wenchuan's pride. Far from dampening her spirit, the victory only stoked Xiao Yiren's resolve. Overcoming the sky-blood golden centipede and embarrassing Qi Wenchuan was just the beginning. "I'll make father famous throughout Ares Academy," she vowed, her small fists clenching as her eyes flared with determination. With that promise on her lips, Xiao Yiren soared into the sky, her figure rising swiftly until she was nothing more than a silhouette against the heavens. She was headed straight for the deepest reaches of the Tianzang Sacred Forest, where her next challenge awaited. There are many ways for Ye Cheng to make his father famous, but none is as straightforward, and none as impressive, as winning the freshman trials by a landslide. He bolted through the thick undergrowth of the Tianzang Holy Forest, eyes darting in every direction, searching for the slightest sign of movement. It was time to hunt. A low, savage growl rumbled from his throat. The Tianzang Holy Forest stretched on without end, home to countless monsters, many at the Emperor and Saint Emperor tiers, and even a few true saints rumored to dwell in its remotest depths. Yet those apex predators were notoriously reclusive. Their lifespans dwarfed those of human cultivators. A single slumber or retreat could last for thousands of years, and encountering one often came down to pure luck. Ye Cheng couldn't hide his disappointment. At his current level, he could easily crush any quasi-saint, and with everything he had, even a perfect saint would find him a formidable foe. What he truly craved was a genuine saint-level monster, if only to prove once and for all that he belonged among the very best. Despite her best efforts, not a single saint-level monster appeared, and not even a quasi-saint one. To rack up points fast, Xiao Yiren finally abandoned the search for rarer prey and focused on slaying Saint Emperor and Emperor-level beasts. She didn't hold back her aura, either. In fact, she made a point of broadcasting her presence far and wide, deliberately drawing every monster within earshot toward her. Her gamble paid off. In just 2 days, she'd slain over 300 creatures, while most of the other promising newcomers barely broke 200. With more than 500 points to her name, she doubled the average genius's haul. Yet with each kill, the beasts of the Tianzang Holy Forest grew warier. Even those at the Saint Emperor and Emperor levels grew craftier and more dangerous. Xiao Yiren rubbed her temples. This is really becoming a headache. Just then, a familiar voice drifted through the thicket. Is that Junior Sister Gu Yiren? Junior Sister Yiren, your reputation precedes you. A light, amused voice drifted from the depths of the forest. Moments later, 2 young prodigies, one male, one female, stepped into the clearing, each wearing the distinctive robes of God of War Academy students. The young man's spirit energy rippled outward, homing in on Yiren without a word. Simultaneously, the young woman's own aura flared, creating an invisible barrier that sealed off every approach within a 1,000-foot radius. Before Yiren could react, a third figure emerged. A tall woman whose striking bay, Audi, was matched only by the gleam of her golden battle robe. Flanked by the 2 juniors, one at her front, the other at her back, she formed a perfect triangle around Yiren. When I heard you defeated a heavenly blood golden centipede with a single punch, the golden-robed woman said, her lips curving into a polite smile, the Academy elders were astonished. Junior sister, would you honor us by demonstrating 2 more of your formidable techniques? Beneath her calm tone, however, Yiren sensed only condescension. A potent emperor-level aura radiated from the woman, radiating both power and the unspoken challenge in her invitation. Her 2 teammates no longer held back, their auras flaring outward like twin suns. They weren't quite on the level of the golden-robed woman's imperial might, but each had already perfected the Saint Emperor realm. Despite only 2 or 3 centuries of cultivation, an astonishingly brief span at such heights, their every gesture and utterance bespoke supreme confidence. The moment of revelation had come. These 3 were no ordinary students. A crisp, commanding voice rang out across the courtyard. Senior team, seize him. This student, Ye Cheng, is now in your hands. Chapter 498. 3 of Ares Academy's standout seniors flanked Ye Cheng, one at his front, one at his back, and another at his side, grinning at him with predatory amusement. Over the past 2 days, they'd been on a winning streak, toppling nearly 100 freshmen one after another. Every time we beat a freshman, we claim half of their accumulated points, one senior boasted, tapping his gauntleted fist. In just 2 days, we've pocketed close to 10,000 points. That's an incredible haul. During the freshman tournament, every point students earn by venturing into the Tianzang Holy Forest and hunting monsters is recorded as a War God point. These points not only determine each newcomer's final ranking once the competition concludes, they also serve as hard currency across Ares Academy. In the future, students will need them to bid on elite class placements, rare gear, and other privileges. Since opportunities to earn War God points are scarce, every point carries immense value, and the only reliable way to acquire them is by completing Academy-assigned tasks. Today, these 3 seniors had chosen an easier path, preying on their less experienced peers. There are, of course, easier ways to earn War God points, like donating rich natural treasures to the Academy, but the exchange rate is outrageously steep. You need nearly 10,000 immortal crystals just to acquire a handful of points. Even the Academy's prodigies and many of its Saint King rank instructors balk at trading in their reserves. Aside from rare exceptions such as Qi Wenxuan, most instructors possess assets measured only in the low hundreds of millions, and having a few 100 million is already considered exceptional. Yet when you convert those sums into War God points, they amount to barely tens of thousands. This system was no accident. The Academy's leadership designed it precisely to compel both students and instructors to throw themselves into the missions the school issues. By pushing everyone to undertake and complete challenging tasks, the Academy hawns its people, forcing them to grow quickly, especially the Tianzhao students. After all, a sword is best sharpened through constant grinding, whether it belongs to an ordinary person or a cultivator. In short, this is the environment into which Ye Cheng and everyone else has been thrust. Even for the veterans who've spent years at Ares Academy, Ares points are a precious commodity. Take the 3 upperclassmen now surrounding Ye Cheng. Each of them has been at the academy for decades. After covering all their training and equipment costs, they barely had a few thousand points to their names. Yet in just the last 2 days, by hunting freshmen, they've netted almost 10,000 points. At this rate, by the end of the competition, they could easily surpass 20,000, a windfall they couldn't have dreamed of in 50 years of study. Flushed with excitement at such a generous reward, the trio grows ever more eager. "Sister Ling, let's not waste any more time," urges Qin Fang, his voice sharp with impatience. He hardly bothers to hide how little he thinks of Ye Cheng. "Let's finish off this junior and move on. There are plenty more freshmen out there to hunt." With their sights set on even greater gains, the 3 veterans close in, confidence brimming on their faces. After 5 decades at the God of War Academy, Ye Cheng still hadn't advanced beyond the pinnacle of the Saint Emperor realm, but his combat prowess was nothing short of extraordinary. He could effortlessly take on foes from higher realms. Even early quasi-saints fell before him. His teammate, the prodigious Sun Yue, matched him blow for blow, and together they formed a formidable pair under the leadership of Ling Fengshui. Clad in golden robes and revered by Ye Cheng as senior sister Ling, she stood at the pure emperor level, capable of overwhelming even late-stage quasi-saints. Only a cultivator who had perfected the quasi-saint path could hope to draw even with her. With such a terrifying lineup, they were the undisputed favorites in the freshman tournament. No other contender, not even the reigning freshman champion, could stand against them. It looks like Guyerin is in for a serious setback. The smartest move now is for her to throw in the towel and forfeit half her points. That way she can stay in the assessment, keep hunting monsters, and salvage enough points to protect her ranking. But if she still can't judge when to press the attack or when to fall back, the outcome will be disastrous. She might lose her right to continue battling, much like that sky-blood golden centipede she defeated earlier, and be instantly teleported out and eliminated. At the Ares Academy's competition arena, dozens of monks, creatures, and other onlookers murmured among themselves. Many felt pity for Guyerin, convinced she'd been singled out by the senior students. Others merely shook their heads and sneered. Pity? This isn't bad luck. It's her own fault. She's too reckless and doesn't know how to hold back. Knowing that in this tournament his opponents included not only the prodigies from his own class and the beasts of the sacred forest, but also the senior talents of the academy hot on his heels, he still pressed forward without a shred of caution, hunting monsters with flamboyant bravado. What else did he expect but to be surrounded now? The hall fell into a tense silence. Dozens of attendees shifted uneasily, yet no one could deny the logic of the remark. On the projection screen, Qi Wenchuan's eyes gleamed as he studied Ye Cheng's resolute silhouette. He had already set his sights on this headstrong youth. Ye Cheng's recklessness and impulsiveness made him the perfect candidate for manipulation. Such flaws, in Qi Wenchuan's mind, would render Ye Cheng all the easier to bend to his will. Suppressing a satisfied smile, Qi Wenchuan sighed theatrically and addressed the room. As our fellow Taoist has pointed out, young Ye Cheng is indeed extraordinarily gifted, but his character still demands considerable refinement. Fortunately, my celestial crocodile tribe offers the ideal crucible for tempering a spirited young man's nature. When Qi Wenchuan made his announcement, the instructors clustered around him, exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew Xiao Yiren could be headstrong, but after watching her fell the monstrous heavenly blood golden centipede in a single strike, who wouldn't want her as a disciple? Most had assumed Qi Wenchuan would give up the chase, and figured that would be the end of it. Yet here he stood, staking his claim. If he moved first, no one else would stand a chance. Just as the murmurs rose and brows furrowed, a low chuckle drifted over from the sidelines. Ye Cheng leaned casually against a training post, eyes glittering with amusement. Guide Xiao Yiren? Tame that little firebrand? Qi Wenchuan's face flushed almost as quickly as it went pale. Ye Cheng's smile widened as he stepped forward. Tell me, Qi Wenchuan, you really believe you're qualified to temper her spirit? His tone was light, but his words landed like blows. Qi Wenchuan's jaw clenched, color storming his cheeks, yet in the next heartbeat he smothered his anger. A sly, resolute gleam sparkled in his eyes as he met Ye Cheng's challenge head-on. Master Qi Wenchuan's laughter rang out across the courtyard. "Oh, forgive me, I nearly forgot my place. Pray tell, Master Gu, how does someone who won't even supply a scrap of natural treasure for his own pupil deserve to train young Yiren?" He swept a mocking glance over Ye Cheng. "Still clutching at Xiao Yiren, I see. So this is the prodigy you've unearthed. You've been fortunate, Master Gu, finding such a talent even before setting foot in the academy, but it seems you're getting a bit overconfident." Qi's lips curled into a taunting smile. "Don't fool yourself into thinking you can take me on merely because you've made friends with a little girl. When the true powers of this world are at stake, your precious disciple will inevitably choose the side with real strength." His words sparked laughter among the instructors of Tiangong Hall. "Well said, Master Qi. Master Gu, you've shown your trump cards far too early. Let's see how you fare against Brother Qi and all of Tiangong Hall." At that very moment, the faculty of the Killing Dao Hall, led by the anxious and pale-faced Hong Yu, stood in stunned silence. They were stunned. They hadn't expected Ye Cheng to be so thoroughly prepared, truly a peerless prodigy on par with Xiao Yiren. And their unease made perfect sense once they remembered Qi Wenchuan's warning. Within the God of War Academy, a genius's single greatest asset is the chance to progress. The Academy's leaders have been crystal clear on one point. Strength determines everything. Without enough power, you can't conquer the most demanding trials. And without conquering those trials, you can't earn the vital war god points you need. Fall behind on points and your cultivation stalls. Your peers surge ahead, the Academy raises the bar on future challenges, and you find yourself trapped in a vicious cycle. In that context, Qi Wenchuan's background and resources are undeniably tempting. Even though Ye Cheng and Xiao Yiren both seem to hail from influential circles, no one is yet certain whether Ye Cheng will agree to take Xiao Yiren on as his disciple. "No one can call it until the dust settles," the mentor from Killing Dao Hall insisted, though his voice quivered with doubt. "Remember, fellow Taoist Ye Cheng's strength is unmatched among us." Qi Wenchuan laughed derisively. "Unmatched? And yet he still fell to that single blow from Ye Cheng? Quite the contradiction." The mentor reddened. He knew all too well that prodigies of the God of War Academy needed no champion stronger than their school's fearsome reputation. When these gifted students picked mentors, they weren't looking for battlefield legends. They wanted influence and resources. That truth made his defense sound hollow to the onlookers. Ye Cheng stepped forward, his expression serene. He placed a reassuring hand on his mentor's shoulder and said, "There's no need to speak for me. We'll simply let the contest play out." His calm smile and steady gaze were meant to convey confidence, but to Qi Wenchuan and the others, Ye Cheng looked like someone huffing himself up, desperate to cover up his shortcomings. They only snorted in amusement, convinced they'd already seen through his bravado. Before Ye Cheng could finish speaking, the three veteran disciples of the Tianzang Holy Forest had already sprung into action, and their target was Xiao Yiren. Boom, boom, boom. At once, Qin Fang and Sun Yue struck in perfect tandem. Sun Yue's gale force winds fanned Qin Fang's roaring flames until the two elements coalesced into a spectral lion, its mane a churning vortex of fire and air. The phantom beast tore through cloud and mist with terrifying speed, barreling straight toward Xiao Yiren. Such a relentless, unified assault would override even a late-stage quasi-saint, let alone someone still in the early quasi-saint ranks. And Xiao Yiren could not retreat. As the windfire lion closed in, Ling Fengshui joined the onslaught. Her golden robe snapped open like a banner in a storm, and torrents of ice and snow flurried from her sleeves. In moments, the air around Xiao Yiren froze solid, sealing off 100-mile radius in glittering frost. Trapped in this icy prison, he readied himself for the full force of Qin Fang and Sun Yue's devastating attack. "It's over," Ling Fengshui's voice echoed from above. "Little sister, you have talent, no doubt about that. But now that you're at Ares Academy, you must stay humble and vigilant. If you hadn't been so arrogant during your last monster hunt, we wouldn't have tracked you down so quickly. In the end, You only have yourself to blame." Her tone was calm, almost lecturing, as she surveyed the field. But when Xiaoyiren caught sight of the projected lion's furious advance, she merely laughed. "Spare me the lecture," she called up. "Those same words apply to the three of you. You preach humility and caution at Ares Academy, yet you charge in here as though you own the place. Don't pretend this was your trap. I stumbled here by accident, not by some clever plan to bring you to my door." With a toss of her hair, Xiaoyiren sprang into the air. Her crimson skirt billowed around her like a lotus in bloom, and though she was still young, an aura of divine power spread out in every direction, wrapping the entire arena in its unstoppable force. "It looks like the chapter text itself didn't come through. Could you please paste the full chapter you'd like revised? Once I have the complete text, I'll rewrite it into smooth, natural English with Ye Cheng as the male protagonist." Chapter 499. Xiaoyiren let out a soft cry, and Ling Fengshui along with the others felt their breath hitch. High above in the clouds, 3 streams of innate divine fire burst forth from Xiaoyiren's sleeves. At her gesture, those flames coalesced into a spectral heavenly sword that pulsed with raw power. The moment it materialized, the blade's edge vaporized thousands of icicles, shredding the spatial barrier Ling Fengshui had erected. With a low hum, the heavenly sword tore through the void and drove straight at the wind-fire rage lion that Qin Fang and Sun Yu had summoned together. That beast, powerful enough to force even a late-stage quasi-saint to yield, barely had time to roar before Xiaoyiren's blade cut it cleanly in half. The creature collapsed in a heap of smoking embers and mangled flesh, the sound of its fall resonating through the frozen air. The backlash of that strike struck Qin Fang and Sun Yu themselves. Still linked to the lion's life force, both were hurled backward like rag dolls, fountains of blood marking their flight before they crashed unconscious into the snow 100 feet away. In a single, devastating blow, Xiaoyiren had shattered 2 former star disciples of the Saint Emperor realm. "Senior Ling, it's your turn." Xiaoyiren didn't hesitate. With a flick of her wrist, she called upon the 3 divine fires of heaven and earth, fusing them into a colossal fireball that hurtled toward Ling Fengshui like a blazing meteor. Ling Fengshui stood at the peak of the Emperor realm, her power and skill far outclassing those of Qin Fang and Sun Yue. Though taken aback by Xiaoyiren's sudden reversal, she quickly steadied herself. A fierce roar escaped her lips as her golden robe snapped open in the wind. Spiritual energy surged from her dantian, crystallizing the surrounding air into layer upon layer of ice and snow. In moments, 1,000 frost-forged walls rose before her, a barrier meant to shatter even the mightiest of blows. As the strongest among the senior students, Ling Fengshui had every reason to trust her defenses. A quasi-saint perfect warrior would struggle to break through such an impenetrable shield, but she had never faced someone like Xiaoyiren. With saint-level power driving that meteor of flame, the ice walls cracked and splintered under its onslaught, torn apart as easily as paper. Xiaoyiren's mastery of the Great Way of Fire and her Emperor Flame Body gave her the elemental edge over Ling Fengshui's Great Way of Ice and Snow. With a thunderous roar, her flaming meteor strike smashed through Ling Fengshui's 1,000-layered ice barrier, barriers strong enough to stagger a saint's spiritual power, with barely a moment's resistance. In an instant, Ling Fengshui collapsed, unconscious, alongside her 2 fallen teammates. Almost immediately, the trio's identity tokens, repositories for tournament points, rose into the air on their own. Each token released a pillar of divine light that merged into Xiaoyiren's badge, sending her point total soaring. Then 3 more brilliant lights enveloped the unconscious challengers and whisked them out of the Tianzang Holy Forest. The entire sequence unfolded in the blink of an eye. By the time the air cleared, Xiaoyiren was already eagerly tallying her newly acquired rewards. Countless cultivators and strange beasts gathered around the square, stood frozen in disbelief. Ling Fengshui and her 2 companions, former top students whose leader's cultivation had already reached the emperor tier, rivaling even some saints, had all been defeated in a heartbeat. "Impossible," someone whispered. "It can't be real." Ling Fengshui, an emperor-level cultivator, taken down so easily by this Ye Cheng? A roar of incredulous murmurs swept through the crowd. Foreign dignitaries and creatures who'd come to watch the ceremony gaped in shock. On the raised viewing platform, the 3 hall masters and the guest elders exchanged stunned glances. Even the black-robed elder officiating the contest looked as though he'd just witnessed a miracle. As silence reigned, the giant overhead light screen flickered to life. Xiao Yiren, having tallied the results, stared at the final tally with wide eyes. 7,950 points, she breathed. These brothers and sisters really outdid themselves. She recalled her own efforts over the past 2 days, chasing monsters across the wilderness, cornering every beast in sight, only to earn just 500 points. And that, she thought, was barely half a day's work compared to everyone else. The senior students had departed a full day after the freshmen, yet somehow Ling Fengshui and her companions had racked up nearly 10,000 points in just 24 hours. Ye Cheng could hardly keep his composure. Before he could even fully register what was happening, his identity token suddenly warned that his combat abilities had been revoked and that teleportation had been forced open. A pillar of divine light enveloped Ling Fengshui and the other 2, preparing to whisk them away. At that critical instant, Ye Cheng moved like a bolt of lightning, materializing in front of Ling Fengshui. With a single elegant sweep of his sleeve, he launched a golden pill into the heart of the teleportation glow. The pill blazed with intricate living patterns and pulsed with potent life essence. Even through the shimmering barrier, its power was unmistakable. A high-grade, 7-pattern supreme healing pill. "What's that little girl up to now?" someone murmured. "Does she really think Ling Fengshui is dying?" Another scoffed. "Her injuries aren't even that bad." Everyone on the square exchanged confused glances, everyone except Ye Cheng. His eyes gleamed with sudden excitement as realization dawned on him. At that moment, just as the teleportation light began to swirl around them, Xiao Yiren gathered her strength and moved. With a swift, determined flick of her wrist, she pressed a small, glowing pill into Ling Fengshui's mouth. Boom! A pillar of golden radiance shot up toward the sky. Under the stunned gazes of the assembled monks and the strange creatures witnessing the ceremony, the elixir's power erupted. Bathed in its majestic life essence, Ling Fengshui's wounds started knitting together at miraculous speed. The onlookers, both monks on the plaza and the masters perched above on the viewing platform, stared in awe. None had expected Xiao Yiren to wield such a potent healing treasure. Before anyone could fully grasp what had happened, Ling Fengshui's eyes fluttered open. The soft glow of the teleportation rune on Ling Fengshui's identity token faded the moment it confirmed its owner was safe. She blinked her eyes open, still disoriented, until the gentle curve of Xiao Yiren's smile drifted into focus. "Junior Sister Yiren, you saved me?" Ling Fengshui murmured, voice shaky. Xiao Yiren nodded once, then waved off Ling Fengshui's questioning glance toward the trees beyond. "There's no need to look for senior brother Qin Fang or senior sister Sun Yue. They're fine, and there's nothing more for them to do here. I'll send them back myself." Ling Fengshui swallowed, still reeling from her rescue. Before she could respond, Xiao Yiren laid a single, slender finger against the air. A pinpoint of silver light pulsed at her fingertip. With a graceful motion, she plucked Ling Fengshui's identity token from the folds of her robe and pressed it into the palm of her other hand. "Let's get straight to the point," Xiao Yiren said softly. Instantly, the token's soft chime rang out. Ding, 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 ding. Ling Fengshui's breath caught. All at once, she realized what had happened. The years of hard-won prestige stored within that token, the spoils of every trial she'd won in the Tianzang Holy Forest. It was gone. More than half of her accumulated God of War points had been stripped away in defeat, dropping her balance from nearly 7,000 points to just over 3,000. She stared at the token in Xiao Yiren's hand, mind whirling. The rescue had cost her dearly. Now she would have to choose her next step with even greater care. Ling Fengshui read in disbelief as her token's missing 3,000-plus points instantly refilled. She had no idea why Xiao Yiren had done this. "These 3,000 points are a gift from me to you, Senior Sister Ling," Xiao Yiren explained, her voice calm. "Consider it the foundation of our future cooperation. I detected a special forbidden aura on your token, one that seems designed to pinpoint the locations of other senior disciples who've entered the Tianzang Holy Forest. Xiao Yiren offered Ling Fengshui a faint smile. Here's my proposal. You help me find those teams. For every group you locate, on top of the 3,300 God of War points I've already given you, I'll reward you with an extra 500 points. Ling Fengshui's brow furrowed. If I remember correctly, there are 35 senior teams in the forest, all hunting down freshmen like us. If you move swiftly and coordinate well, Senior Sister Bei, Xiao Yiren said with a confident smile, by the time this competition ends, you won't have to leave early, and you'll walk away with a small fortune. Ling Fengshui paused, taken aback. You really think that's possible? They stood in the dappled shade of the Tianzang Sacred Forest. Only moments ago, Ling Fengshui had witnessed Xiao Yiren's fearsome power, and now the junior had the nerve not just to stand her ground, but to turn the tables and go on the hunt against the senior teams. Yet, the most astonishing part was the proposition itself. Ling Fengshui ran the numbers in her head. If one of the 35 senior squads could earn just 500 points in the contest, by the end, she would receive over 20,000 contribution points, 3,300 of which Xiao Yiren was already promising her up front. That sum exceeded every estimate Ling Fengshui had made when she first entered the forest. Despite her initial shock, the opportunity was too tempting to ignore. She met Xiao Yiren's gaze and nodded slowly, determination settling into her expression. Very well. I'll help you, but you must be ready to act on my signal. Ling Fengshui ran the numbers again. On her own, she'd expected to earn 20,000 points, but split 3 ways with Qin Fang and Sun Yu, she'd only walk away with 7,000 or 8,000. Teaming up with Xiao Yiren, however, could change everything. If that girl really could take down more than a dozen of the 35 senior teams, Ling Fengshui's share would easily top 10,000 points. Was Xiao Yiren strong enough? In Ling Fengshui's mind, the only things standing in their way were the hunting parties led by the very best seniors. Aside from them, any other team that crossed paths with Xiao Yiren would meet a swift and decisive end. Whoever faced this little powerhouse would simply become her spoil. Senior sister, Ling Fengshui ventured, her heart pounding with anticipation. Have you made your decision? Xiao Yiren studied her for a moment, letting that hopeful look settle on Ling Fengshui's face before she finally curved her lips into a faint smile. Junior sister, your bold spirit impresses me. Really, what more is there to say? Ling Fengshui drew in a steadying breath, then reached out and clasped Xiao Yiren's hand. Here's to a successful collaboration. Chapter 500. From their vantage point on the viewing platform overlooking the competition square, the instructors of the 3 halls, along with the countless monks and magical beasts who'd gathered at Ares Academy, watched the action unfold on the giant projection screen. Even Ye Cheng found himself smiling at what he saw. He'd never imagined that his little daughter could be so cunning. Yet there she was, executing Xiao Yiren's strategy to perfection. He had to give her credit. The plan was sound, and he was positively eager to see her next move. If my little prodigy can take down the entire 35th senior team, he whispered to himself, then no one in all of Ares Academy will stand a chance against her. But the faces around him grew tense. The instructors standing beside him exchanged worried glances, and the masters of Tiangong Hall looked positively sullen. After all, this freshman tournament was supposed to showcase the prowess of Ares Academy's senior students. Instead, it was turning into a disaster for them, just as Ling Fengshui's team had discovered moments ago. In a single day, they'd seen their accumulated war god points nearly double, thanks entirely to the exploits of Xiao Yiren. A hush fell over the viewing platform as the next match was about to begin. All eyes were fixed on the projection screen, some in awe, others in disbelief. And for his part, Ye Cheng leaned forward, pride swelling in his chest, ready to witness his daughter's next triumph. When preparations for the freshman competition began, the instructors of each hall scrambled to assign their finest students to the senior hunter teams. Earning early points would give their protégés a head start and accelerate their advancement. In the end, Tiangong Hall appeared to have the upper hand, fielding the most talented lineup of senior hunters. But the moment Xiao Yiren stepped onto the field, Tiangong's advantage evaporated, and with it, their chance at glory. The hall that had seemed poised to dominate was now facing the very real prospect of losing face. Tiangong's instructors, normally composed and confident, were anything but calm. "Such blatant disrespect for our elders," one master snapped, eyes blazing. "Who does this girl think she is, challenging her seniors like that?" "She's turning on her own allies," another fumed. "It's outrageous." Anger flickered across their faces. Tiangong's chosen disciples were strong, on par with Ling Fengshui's team, perhaps even a touch superior. Yet against Xiao Yiren, the outcome felt all but decided. "Master Qi," they urged, voices tight with urgency, "you must find a way to counter her. Otherwise, if we allow that young girl to throw everything into disarray, aren't we breaking the rules? The freshman trial is meant to temper the newcomers under the seniors' pursuit. It can't be the other way around." "That's right, Teacher Qi. You must help us figure out a plan." All the instructors of Tiangong Hall turned to Qi Wenxuan. His face darkened. He had several promising disciples on the hunting team, none of them the absolute top, but still far stronger than Ling Fengshui's squad. Even if they clashed with Xiao Yiren, he wouldn't have worried. But if his students were picked off one by that girl, Tiangong Hall's reputation would suffer, and so would his pride. "It's settled," he said through clenched teeth, forcing a calm expression. "Leave it to me." Silently grinding his teeth, Qi Wenxuan channeled his spirit energy. A brilliant beam of light surged from his brow, pierced the cloud-choked sky above the square, and shot off toward the distant Tianzang Holy Forest. The movements were so subtle and well hidden that, apart from the black-robed elder presiding over the contest, no one else seemed to notice. "Brother Gu, what are you watching?" Hong Yu asked, still stunned by Xiao Yiren's display in the Killing Dao Hall. Ye Cheng didn't answer at once. He had turned away from the competition screen and was staring up at the sky as if reading some secret message in the clouds. Hong Yu followed his gaze, then shook his head in confusion. "Nothing special," Ye Cheng said at last, lowering his eyes and smiling faintly. "I was just watching someone about to send their own disciples into the fire pit. I'm curious to see how it ends." Hong Yu frowned, but he didn't press for details. After all, in the depths of the Tianzang Holy Forest, Xiao Yiren, now allied with Ling Fengshui, had already begun her next round of hunts. This time, she wasn't preying on the forest's native beasts, but on the veteran students who'd once turned the new prodigies into their own quarry. Under Ling Fengshui's guidance, Xiao Yiren had amassed a small fortune in just 2 days, and the forest itself thrummed with the promise of even greater rewards. In just 2 days, he had defeated more than 20 senior students, and in the process, amassed a staggering 100,000 war god points. Ling Fengshui, who had been trailing him all the while, watched Ye Cheng's every move with growing amazement. His power was absolute, his victories effortless, and the extra 10,000 points she'd earned herself on the sidelines only deepened her admiration. "This junior brother," she whispered to herself, "possesses unparalleled might and extraordinary talent. His future achievements will know no bounds." As for her own prospects, the best she could hope for, relying solely on her own efforts, even with the Academy's resources, was to attain the rank of Domain Master, perhaps even Domain Master Perfection, at her peak. But if she were to pledge herself to Ye Cheng, serve him, learn from his ambition and genius, then her path could extend far beyond that limit. A thrill of determination coursed through Ling Fengshui's veins. No matter how the competition turned out, she resolved to remain at Ye Cheng's side, even if it meant humbly assuming the role of his disciple. Ye Cheng himself was oblivious to the vows being made for him, yet he could sense Ling Fengshui's mounting enthusiasm, and perhaps a quiet eagerness, as they continued their journey together. Xiao Yiren's lips curved into a pleased smile. The more eager Ling Fengshui was in praising her, the harder she'd work, and the faster they'd locate the former student team, the richer Yiren would become. Just as she was savoring that thought, buzz! Buzz! Ling Fengshui's identity token at her waist suddenly vibrated, her face drained of color. 3 pulses. 3 senior teams are closing in on us? She snatched up the token, plunging her spirit into its warning signal. Worry and tension twisted her features. "They've surrounded us from all sides," Junior sister Yiren, they've discovered our little scheme, and they're launching a united counterattack. An insolent laugh rang out, carried on a breeze of slicing chi. Ha! Sister Ling, you're right about one thing. You finally realized we're here. But you're wrong about when we learned of you. We've been watching you for quite some time. With that, 3 formidable figures stepped from the tree line, their eyes alight with triumph. In the shadowy forest before them, Ling Fengxue and Xiao Yiren suddenly found themselves confronted by 3 figures. At the forefront strode a young man garbed in a black robe, a gleaming halberd resting at his side. His eyes glinted with barely contained eagerness as they fixed on the 2 cultivators. Before either Ling Fengxue or Xiao Yiren could speak, a cool, distant voice drifted in from the thicket to their left. I sensed something was amiss as early as yesterday, it said. Senior brother Yang passed along some troubling news, and after piecing it together, I tracked you both down. I never imagined that junior sister Ling would team up with a newcomer to strike at our fellow disciples. Truly disappointing. From the dark undergrowth stepped the speaker, a massive man whose broad shoulders and towering frame made him look more statue than flesh. Flanking him were 2 equally imposing companions, one young man, one young woman, each with bronze-hued skin so hard and metallic it seemed forged from divine air. Before Ling Fengxue and Xiao Yiren could gather their wits, a sudden rush of wind tore through the clearing. High above them, where the clouds swirled like a roiling sea, 3 more figures hurtled downward, crashing toward the forest floor like shooting stars. Clad in immaculate white robes, these newcomers radiated an aura of power and nobility that silenced the assembled cultivators. On the left breast of each white robe was the embroidered image of a towering pavilion, the unmistakable emblem of Tiangong Pavilion, the highest sanctuary of Tiangong Hall. From this alone, it was clear that the 3 youths standing before them were elite disciples personally appointed by the pavilion's masters. The moment they appeared, the brash youngster, who had burst in wielding a halberd, and the trio of massive body cultivation prodigies, renowned for their iron-like physiques, both froze in silent awe. Instinctively, both seasoned squads of veteran geniuses lowered their heads in respectful bows, no longer daring to show any hint of arrogance. Ling Fengxue, who had been brimming with confidence only moments before, suddenly turned ashen. His eyes widened with a mix of shock and fear. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Yangba, Lindong, Lumo! He stammered, voice trembling. He drew a shaky breath. I never imagined the 3 pillar knights of Tiangong Pavilion would appear here together and join forces like this. Qi Wenchuan's 3 disciples had spent months mastering a specialized set of coordinated attack techniques. When they fought together, they were virtually unstoppable within the God of War Academy. Only the very top tier of students could hope to stand against them. In Ling Fengshui's estimation, even Ye Cheng's odds of winning were slim. What made their alliance truly formidable, however, was the support they'd recruited. Shen Dong, the black-robed youth, famed for his razor-sharp halberd, and Chang Nan, the legendary physical training captain among the senior students, had both thrown in their lot with the trio. The strength of these 2 alone rivaled that of the famed 3 heroes of Tiangong Hall. Counting their immediate followers, 9 elite cultivators now formed an almost impenetrable square. Could a quasi-saint unification, or for that matter, an early or mid-stage saint, break such an encirclement? Ling Fengshui's heart sank. Below them, Yang Ba and his companions gazed up at Ling Fengshui and Ye Cheng, their eyes alight with avarice. Shen Dong and Chang Nan exchanged a knowing look. They had unearthed Ling Fengshui and Ye Cheng's secret maneuver 2 days earlier, and now the noose was tightening. The information had come straight from the tip. Qi Wenchuan had slipped them in secret. Yang Ba and his allies had waited 2 days before contacting Shen Dong and Chang Nan, and only then did they move to attack Xiao Yiren. Their reasoning was simple: fatten the pig before slaughter. Yiren, Fengshui, Yang Ba called out, his voice deceptively calm as he allowed a proud smile to spread across his face. You 2 must have racked up quite a few points by now. I'll make you a deal. Hand over your identity tokens and every last point you've earned, and I'll let you go. Ling Fengshui's eyes flared. Brother Yang, isn't that a bit harsh? She demanded, struggling to keep her temper in check. Yang Ba shrugged, as if he were merely stating a fact. There's still 1 day left in the competition. If you push yourselves, you could make more points and keep your tokens. Refuse, and you'll lose half your current points, suffer serious injuries, and be disqualified. A flash of anger crossed Ling Fengshui's face. In her book, giving up all their hard-won points was unthinkable. But before she could articulate her objections, Yang Ba's smirk made it clear there would be no further bargaining. Ye Cheng waited at Yang Ba's side. With a casual flick of his wrist, he unleashed a massive, fiery palm imprint, its edges crackling with demonic fire that streaked straight toward Ling Fengshui. If it struck her, she'd be spouting blood on the spot. Crack! Just as the infernal palm was about to collide with Ling Fengshui's chest, Xiao Yiren swept her palm through the air. A pillar of golden divine flame erupted at her command, incinerating Ye Cheng's attack in an instant. Junior Sister Yiren, thank you. Ling Fengshui gasped, both relieved and fiercely grateful. Ashamed to have been nearly defeated, she bowed deeply. Above them, Ye Cheng hovered, eyes bright with newfound interest. Innate divine flame? He murmured. Impressive luck. Very well. Here's your chance. He grinned and held out one hand. I'll let you keep 1/10 of your points, but you must hand over that heaven and earth flame. Before she could react, he swept his other hand up, aiming to lock her in place and seize the precious fire. Yang Ba, standing beside him, frowned at the ruthless display, but he stayed silent. After all, it had been Ye Cheng's offer. If she refused, she'd lose everything. Yang Ba was still scheming. As soon as Xiao Yiren handed over the treasure, he'd swoop in, subdue her, and force both her and Ling Fengshui to give up every single point. No messy fights, just a clean take. He barely had time to savor the thought when, bang! A muffled explosion detonated at his side, wrenching him back to reality. Ling Fengshui stared in stunned silence. Shendong, Changnan, and Yang Ba turned, disbelief etched on their faces. Lindong's voice cut off mid-sentence. In that instant, Xiao Yiren moved. Like a phantom, she flashed before Lindong, her slender fist engulfed in tricolored divine fire. The blow struck with earth-shattering force. Lindong let out a bone-chilling scream as his bones splintered. He crumpled to the ground like a lifeless puppet, carving a massive crater into the earth. Dozens of meridians collapsed under the impact, and he lay unconscious in the pit, utterly broken.